Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Small Screen Star Wars, a Tower of Babel podcast. As always, I'm Julian Mush. I'm joined by Rachel Wilkinson.
Oh, hi again.
Hello again. It's been a while
Yeah, we're
since
back.
Someone said
Well,
to me, I
I'm
was like,
back.
well, no, Small Screen Star Wars is back. We haven't done an episode of these since
Mm-hmm.
since this whole dealio. But
Yeah.
someone tried to. I saw on Twitter somewhere that it's been 5 months since the Mandalorian season
Ended?
finale. I don't think
Oh,
that's true. Is
okay.
that true? Is that I don't like? There's no way to know that information. Obviously,
I
obviously.
I guess maybe because was it winter, like December?
I don't. Let's see. I'm gonna look this up now.
I
I'm
guess we are. We
because
could
like
look it up, but it feels like it wasn't that long ago, but I guess maybe it was.
that's the problem. We're in this like pandemic world. Um, Everything feels like it was just yesterday,
Yeah,
despite the
exactly.
fact that it was December 18th apparently. Really?
Oh,
Yeah,
wow,
December
okay.
18th. So it has been 5 months. It's
Yeah.
crazy. It's almost been half a year since we've recorded a podcast about Star Wars, but
Oh,
that's
yeah,
about to
that's weird.
change. That's about to change because there's lots of episodes of the Bad Batch coming. So,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, spoilers for this episode. We're going to be reviewing the Bad Batch season 1, episode 1, and season 1, episode 2 in just a moment. But before we get to that, let's kind of there's a lot to cover. So yeah, I think there's 16 episodes this season. They're
Oh,
probably
really?
yeah, there's quite a few.
For
Like
some
the
reason, I
full
thought there was
season one.
less.
Maybe it's in the teens somewhere,
Nice.
right?
Okay.
So, but I'm pretty sure 16 is the number, and so that's exciting. We're gonna have lots of Clone Wars style animation stuff to talk about
Mm-hmm.
over the next several months. So that's very, very exciting. Never mind the fact that there's a bunch of shows coming, and we'll talk about that stuff as it comes. It was just Star Wars Day. That was when the Bad Batch premiered. And did you do anything special for Star Wars Day? That's the question.
I bought new Star Wars shirts so I could
Mm,
wear one. But that was like the week
nice.
before, and I ate tacos. So that was about it.
Are tacos Star Wars themed? Or
I mean, no, but
no? But
I don't
Cinco de
know.
Mayo. Cinco de Mayo is the day after Star Wars Day.
Yeah. So I had
I always
tacos on
forget
the
about
brain.
that.
Yeah.
They also call Cinco de Mayo Revenge of the Fifth. I don't know if you've heard that.
Right. Yes, I
Uh,
have heard that.
which for the record, I think is lame. Like,
You're not allowed to think one is cool and the other one is lame.
is that true? I don't like.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Well, apparently Gen Z thinks we're all lame for having a Star Wars Day, so there's that.
well, there's also a whole other crowd on the other side that thinks we're a bunch of like corporate shills for like following on Disney's plans. But there's been Star Wars Day long before Disney bought Star Wars.
Yeah, no, people
So
have always celebrated it. I mean, not
yeah,
always, but
since yeah, it's as old as Christmas.
exactly.
Some might say it's better than Christmas. Although I would say this year's Star Wars Day, particularly, but despite the fact that the Bad Batch premiered with a 90-minute episode, which I thought was amazing, and we'll talk about it in
Yeah.
just a minute, but there wasn't a lot of news. Like there was no new trailers for like. There's not people were excited to maybe see like a glimpse at Obi-Wan because I know that they
Right.
started filming or more Andor, but no, none of that. We haven't seen any of that. Instead, we did get new artwork on the Star Wars Disney Plus pages. I don't know if you saw
Oh,
that when you're browsing.
I did
Not a fan.
not.
I actually liked the artwork that they had before because it was concept art before that they were using for the
Okay.
different. Like, so you would go. Here's what happens. You go to the different
Okay.
movies inside Disney Plus, and each of the different movies has its own little special artwork.
Right, right, right,
And
right.
now it's a lot like. Are you familiar with the like the mini YouTube animated series, the Galaxy of Heroes, Star Wars stuff? Have you seen any of
I
those?
played the game Galaxy of Heroes.
Well, maybe I'm thinking of something else, but like it's just like kind of like these like really short, like 5 minutes or less, like animated clips about Star
Okay.
Wars characters. There's like a one about Han Solo. There's one
Huh.
about Kylo Ren, but they're like kind of narrated. They're kind of like these like mini like meet these characters kind of things, right?
Oh, that's
In a
cool.
in a galaxy of adventures. Okay, yeah, it's adventures, Galaxy of
Okay.
Adventures.
So I was gonna say Galaxy of Heroes is that game I play, the mobile game.
The names are very similar.
Yeah, very similar.
So they have the new artwork is much more inspired by that look of, from my opinion, of that look of those animated features, which are kind of cool, but I think they look better in motion than they do of these stills, which are like
Gotcha.
pretty like low-fi. They're not really detailed, in
I
terms of
see.
artwork.
Yeah.
I don't know, nitpicky. I'm literally reviewing and critiquing the artwork on Disney Plus, but this is what I was left with because there's nothing to talk about from Star Wars Day. On the
Yeah.
other hand, there's also Star Wars biomes and Star Wars like the ship fly through. What
It's
did you
cool.
think of
The
that?
biomes was cool. I put it on, and that's like something
Okay.
that would be like, oh, I just like having it on the background. It's very good, like ambiance, fall asleep to.
Yeah, if
I
you
don't
like
know if I
falling asleep with
watched.
the TV on. I
I
don't like
do
doing
that
that.
I do that all the time, like
Oh,
every
okay.
night.
All right,
I'm
fair
one of
enough.
those. But I don't know if I watched the ships one. I don't think I did. I think I just
Well,
watched the biomes one.
here's my okay. I'm glad you liked it because I thought it was dumb. And here's the thing. Like I actually was excited. I watched all of the biomes stuff, despite that it was
Yeah.
it's obviously super boring. On like face value, it's just like a really slow moving drone shot through some sort of Star Wars environment, which does
You
sound
expect it
cool.
to be.
Right. It sounds cool on first blush. And I was like, okay, I want to see
Yeah.
what that looks like. But I was disappointed because I thought the effects were really shitty, or at least
Mm.
below average. Like when we're like flying through Hoth and we've got like these tauntauns running up the mountain. They're leaving no footprints behind. They look very like clunky and like
I didn't notice.
I don't know. So I have a critical eye for this stuff. Obviously, I thought the one that looked surprisingly
That's
the one
true.
that looked best was Mustafar, but maybe that's because it's all made up, like it's all CG. Whereas like I
Yeah.
think the one like on Hoth is like an actual drone shot over
Probably.
actual glacier. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
But like I don't know. I thought the CG was on the ships that flew by every once in a while was like subpar. It looked like a video game, which like is fine if you're in a video game, but this is supposed to be like ultra realistic, so that was
Right.
weird. So anyway, and the ship fly through one is even worse. Honestly, like there's the one that I watched was the Millennium Falcon, and the exterior shots are all like that same like computer graphics from a video game style that I think look bad, and the interior
Okay.
shots are all the interior shots that you have from like the real Millennium Falcon that they have built at like Disney World or whatever,
Hmm.
and it looks great. It's like the same stuff that they use for filming in the movies and stuff. What I don't understand is why they didn't use the exterior stuff that they have, because they actually have a full size Millennium Falcon built, but instead of using that thing to shoot, they used a CG model for some reason. So I don't, and a
Hmm.
bad looking one in my opinion. So I don't know that, and that's the same thing for the Star Destroyer. They do the same thing, and like I think they have the right idea, but it just does not look as good as it does in the movies. And in which case, it's
Fair
like,
enough.
what are we even doing here? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough.
So I found those to be disappointing. That being said, the Gendy Tartakovsky Clone Wars, speaking of Clone Wars, is also now on Star Wars or on the Disney Plus Star Wars page. I don't. Have you gone back and watched any of those 2D Clone Wars stuff? Have you ever seen them?
Is that the one that looks like Samurai Jack?
Yes.
Okay. I had okay, I watched half of it, I think. I should have watched the other half. I got busy doing something and then it was playing in the background. I wasn't paying attention. I do need to go back and watch it, but I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of that animation style, I guess. I don't know.
Sure, fair
Maybe
enough.
I'm not woke enough for it.
I'm not
I just
woke.
like I just hate the way Asajj Ventress looks in it. She looks super weird.
I don't think
I don't
wokeness
know.
has anything to do with that, for the
Yeah, it's
record.
fair. I just feel like
Uh,
I'm like less of a, I don't know. People are going to judge me and say that I'm less educated because I don't like that style of
No,
art.
I don't think so. Everyone has different tastes in art. I just think there is a whole group of people that think that's like the best version of Clone Wars. I
Right.
don't agree. To be fair though, I did think they were really really cool when they came out. So when they
Yeah.
did come out, which is like I think like 2000, I don't even know what year would have been. It's early 2000s, and I
Yeah.
had them on DVD. And I remember when when the new Clone Wars movie came out, and I was like, these are now collectibles. I remember thinking about that. I was like,
Hmm.
these are not real anymore. But I still have them, and I kept them, and I'm pretty sure I have them somewhere inside the house.
Yeah.
The original DVDs of them, and it's really cool that they were brought to Disney Plus. So honestly, if you
Yeah.
haven't
That's
seen it
true. No, I
before,
do need
would
to give it another
recommend.
chance. Yeah.
They are making some of those characters canon. I think one of the clone troopers has been brought into the comic books, including, and also that like bad guy knight character that's like an alien thing. he's also been like canonized in some way in the comic
Wait,
books.
are you talking about like the big oozy tentacle
the
alien?
big oozy
That thing was
tentacle
dumb.
alien? Yeah, so he's been canonized. He's now in.
Really?
Yeah, he was put into a comic book. My
Because
understanding. I could be wrong there.
I was talking about that, and I was like, someone was saying like, oh, that like it'd be cool if they brought that canon, and I was like, literally like, that's dumb. How do you bring like a monster like that into canon? How do you explain that? I get that it's Star Wars, but it's like, how do you explain something like that weird and that powerful like anywhere else, and why we haven't seen it?
What's cool is when you do that stuff and you bring them into canon or put them into a comic book, you can change you can like keep the look and style, but then like maybe they kind of tweak or nerf the character a little bit.
Because it looked like it was like Venom. Like it had that same sort of like, symbiote weirdness to it. And I was like, no, it's just like bringing Venom into Star Wars. But fair, I guess they did it. So
hey, listen, I have no problem with bringing Venom into Star Wars.
I mean, me neither, actually, but fair.
Like I'm surprised they haven't done a symbiote in the past. To be completely honest, that's surprising.
That's true.
So I don't know. There's just a lot. There is a lot of Star Wars stuff. There's just not a lot like happening right this second, except for the Bad Batch. So let's get into the Bad Batch, and we're gonna break this the first 2 episodes down, like in the way we always do, kind of like a scene by scene breakdown, and kind of talk about some of the themes, talk about some of the music, what we liked, what we didn't like. Definitely nitpick a bit because that's just what we love to do, or at least I love to do, certainly.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that for sure. And before we get into it, I want to mention that there is a bit of, I guess, drama that's outside of the show, surrounding the show. So when the Bad Batch first premiered, the first 2 episodes, and there was a little bit of discussion online about whitewashing of the characters. Discussion of like the skin tone of the clones themselves has been like lightened up for this show.
Oh, I see.
I don't want to dive into this too much because I don't think it's really relevant to what we normally talk about here. But I do want to say is that like I acknowledge that I understand where people are coming from with this. I think it's in this case a little blown out of proportion because the look and design of the characters and what they brought up was the clones themselves. But I think again we're talking about clones on Kamino in this like really bright white lighting, which is gonna make everybody look pretty white. And then also Saw Gerrera, who appears in the first episode, spoilers, and has the more like Clone Wars look to him than he does in maybe like the movies where he's played by Forrest Whitaker. But again, I would say that in this case is maintaining the same skin tone and color that he had from his appearance in the Clone Wars. So I can see both sides of this argument, but I just think it might be in this case a little overblown. That being said, I heard that Lucasfilm is taking this seriously and they're looking into it. So we might get an updated version that has a slightly tweaked color for the skin tone. But again, I just think, I get where people are coming from here. But I think there's a little bit more to it than just, they're just the one trying to whitewash them. I don't think that's the case. So anyway, putting that out there. Any thoughts on that? Just hearing that now, I imagine you just heard that now.
I did just hear that right now. Is that basically because of their how do I put this? Because it's not matching like the actors.
Tamara Morrison, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's not matching his skin tone. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
but and then like I don't know if this is a defense necessarily, but that is the color that they have, the same skin tone. The clones, from my opinion, are the same color that they've been through all of the Clone Wars.
That's just what I was going to say
really
too.
Different here. You could make the argument that those are all. It's all an issue. That
it is all an issue in general. Yes, I totally get that. Yeah.
But if you don't have an issue with the Clone Wars and you do have an issue with the Bad Batch, then I think it's like, okay, let's take a step back for a second. That would be my thought on that.
No, that is a good point where it's like, okay, like you have this actor that is playing Boba Fett and all of those clones are based off of him. So yeah, why are they paler than they should be? No, that's very good.
Why do they all have a Kiwi accent? Accents aren't genetic
Is it Kiwi
traits.
or is it South African?
It's Kiwi. So here's the thing.
Is it? Okay.
Here's the thing.
Because yeah, we can get to it. But Omega's, I thought hers sounded a little bit more like South African.
Hers is an actual, and we'll get into that for sure. I was going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about it right now. Yeah. Omega's accent, it's played by a female voice actress, right? I'll actually bring up her name here, so I don't know her name off the top of my head. Let's see here. See the full cast. It's only one name, D. Bradley Baker. So we'll talk about that. By the way, D. Bradley Baker's doing a great job here. So Michelle Ang is playing Omega, and she has, or at least I don't know if she is from New Zealand or has a true Kiwi accent, but the version of the Kiwi accent that Omega's using is much more true to a real Kiwi accent.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which is why
it makes sense.
Why she
sounds. Yeah, it sounds. It sounds a little bit different. That's why I thought maybe. And I do I'm bad for getting New Zealand and the South African accents kind of mixed up.
They are all Australian, South Africa, New Zealand. All have variants on a theme. They're all kind of versions of.
They're gonna come for you for saying that because Kiwis and Aussies get very mad when you confuse. Yeah,
listen. I know several Kiwis and several Australians. I know that. I get it. But here's something that they need to. Here's something that they need to know. Here's a hard truth. Their accents are similar. Your accents are similar. They're not the same. You can say the same thing. You can say the same thing about me and someone from Minnesota.
Minnesota, right? Yeah. I was going to say Minnesota and us.
They're close. They're close.
Yeah.
If someone said that you have similar accents, I would say, yeah, that's true. If they said that we had the same, that's a bald-faced lie. I'm not saying that they're the same. I'm saying that they're similar. Okay, so that's all I'm saying. And anyway, I just think that's a fun kind of side thing because I think D. Bradley Baker's doing a great job for the record.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I think he's
voicing every single one of those clones and in a different way. And I don't know how he does it. He's
it's truly impressive. I really think it's a tour de force in acting here that he's putting on. But I would say...
they just have him in a room by himself talking to himself? Is that how he does these episodes?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. And I would love to see some more behind the scenes. I'm sure we will get it.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if he does okay, I'm going to do all of Hunter's lines, and then I'm going to do all of Wrecker's lines, and then I'm going to do all, or is he switch back and forth, and it's Hunter
maybe he has somebody
Wrecker.
reading with him, so it's easier for him to go back and forth. But yeah.
Yeah, he says he has an encyclopedia inside of his brain that he pulls on to do the different voices for different characters. But it's really for me it would be really hard to
I wouldn't be able to.
He's
keep
just doing a really
straight.
good job. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's get into this episode. Before we do, I will mention that we are recording this live. We record live on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. So you can subscribe to any of those places, and you can find us live there. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell, so you get notifications when we do go live, because you can actually chat with us during the show when we do record. And we are recording inside of Discord. If you want to get into the Discord channel, you need to help support the show on Patreon. So if you want to help support the show and get some bonuses out of it, including access to the Discord as well as our monthly film clubs, head over to patreon.com/TowerBabblecast to, again, throw us a few bucks and help support the show and get in on the community. And you can listen live while we record in the Discord room as well. Okay, let's get into this. So the first episode is called Aftermath. Love the name. Love this episode title. Love everything about this episode. We'll talk about every moment as we go through it here.
The title card was so good.
Oh, I was gonna say, starting with the title card, burns away the red Clone Wars logo. So when we last left the Clone Wars, the title had gone from yellow to red in the final season, right? And signifying the kind of the rise of the Empire. And once Order 66 happens, that red Clone Wars logo burns away to reveal the new title card, the Bad Batch, which I think honestly could have been a really cool moment if it wasn't spoiled in the trailer, because they used that same technique in the trailer for the Bad Batch.
Did they?
If you hadn't seen it and you saw that for the first time, I'm so jealous of you, because that's so cool.
That's exactly why I don't watch trailers. So
okay, yeah, for my job, for the job of the podcast, I try to keep up with this stuff, so I do watch the trailers.
I never do, because I'm like, ooh, it kind of spoils it. I just like to go in blind.
It totally does. But here's the thing: what I'm really digging from Marvel and basically Disney and Star Wars, Lucasfilm, what they've been doing with their shows and the trailers for them is the trailers basically only have footage from the first episode and maybe a couple mini little shots from the rest of the season.
Okay.
And that was true for the Bad Batch. The Bad Batch trailers all were like, come check out the show, it's going to be crazy. And all that crazy stuff was the first episode. So like we really don't know where the show is going. Having seen the trailers, I have no clue, which I think is really exciting. Anytime you can kind of venture into uncharted territory, especially in Star Wars, even during an era that we kind of are familiar with, right? It's I think it's a bonus. I'm super stoked because, and I've been talking about this on the show before, but the timeline that we're walking through or walking into right now, the immediate quote unquote aftermath of Order 66 and the steps that were taken by the rising empire to convert over from the Republic, although not maybe exciting, I find fascinating. So everything that we see in episode 2, especially of the season, where they start dealing with like the difference between a Republic credit and an Imperial credit, boring, but I think fascinating. So I'm really stoked by this. So again, another thing I guess mention about this title card is that as it burns away the Clone Wars and then we see the Bad Batch logo, I think it's signifying that this is a little bit more of a mature story than we got with the Clone Wars, and I think that's proven out in the first 2 episodes. I wouldn't say tonally, like a major tonal shift away from what we saw in the Clone Wars, but I think similar to what we saw with some of the more serious arcs in the Clone Wars. Would you agree?
I would agree, yeah, for sure.
Okay. So what I really liked here is that as like one last gasp of the Clone Wars, as we start with this Clone Wars style voiceover sequence that started every single Clone Wars episode, and sets the time and the place. It's always done that, set where are we, what's happening, right? So in this case, we're in the middle of the Outer Rim sieges. This is very similar to the same voiceover we got at the beginning of the final season of the Clone Wars. And just like that voiceover gave us new clips from Revenge of the Sith that were done in the Clone Wars style, this also gave us new clips of Revenge of the Sith done in the Clone Wars style. So that's really cool. And I'm sure you saw on Twitter the GIFs of them comparing them side to side.
So good. Yeah.
Yeah. So although arguably unnecessary, and I would be curious to like think what people, or to get the opinion of like what normies would think about whether or not like if including the Revenge of the Sith footage in its full like live action like look would have made it. This is completely like a side note, but like I think if instead of doing it in the Clone Wars style and like making this consistent look, I'm wondering if like using the, and I guess it's because it's in the show and not like the previously on,
right,
where you have maybe a little bit more control. So I guess I'm walking back on this already. If it's inside the actual show, it should be done in the same style. But on the previously on, I think it would be really interesting, and I haven't seen them do this yet, and including with stuff with The Mandalorian, where I think they should start blending stories that we've seen in animation and live action and say, hey, this happened to this character in animation and in live action. It's the same story, and then use that as the previously on. I don't know. Would you agree? Do you think that's weird? Do you think it would throw people off if in like Mandalorian you had like a sequence from like the Clone Wars?
I mean, I think it would only throw off people who weren't familiar with the content.
Well, that's the people they like the most. So
yeah. So like, yeah, I think if all of a sudden you were just watching Mandalorian and all of a sudden it was like cut to a cartoon, you'd be like, what the fuck? So
right.
I think it would confuse, as you say, the normies, but
not inside the show, but on the previously on, like, hey, we're about to, like, you know how they always do the previously on? It always gives away probably too much. Like, oh, remember all these very specific things because they're going to be important in this episode.
Because it's relevant now.
Right. Yeah. So like,
remember this person we haven't talked about in a while.
Exactly. Like, oh man, I forgot that person, but thank you for reminding me. I guess they're going to be coming in today. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm mostly fine with that. Like, because it ultimately does help you go like, oh, that's who that was. That's why this is important. So if that's the case, if that's really what those are for, I think they should have absolutely used some of that. Maybe they'll use it when we do the Ahsoka show and it's like previously on Ahsoka, we'll get like pieces from the Mandalorian and bits from the Clone Wars and maybe bits from Rebels all blended together and we can like mash it up.
Right.
But maybe they'll just want to reshoot it in live action. Like, honestly, I don't know. I don't know. Okay, so let's get into the actual episode. We've only got to the title card. We have lots to cover. We meet Depa Billaba and her Padawan Caleb Dune on Caller. So we're all familiar with Caleb Dune. This is Kanan from Rebels before he changes his name. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're introduced to him and Depa, as well as clone Captain Gray. A couple tweaks here. So this sequence of events has been seen in the Kanan comic book. Did you read that at all?
I haven't read that one. No.
Okay. So in the Kanan comic book, they go over the Order 66 sequence. There are some changes from that comic. So they're already kind of there. I know some people are really upset that they made some changes, and I think that there's and like I've watched a video on some of those what those changes are, and ultimately, if they had more time, I think they would have done a much closer recreation of those events. But in just because of the fact that we're coming into this, and really this is the Bad Batch show, and it's not the Caleb Dune and Depa Billaba show,
right?
We don't get have those like moments before where we see Depa and Caleb like, bonding with the clones, which is what we get in the comic book, right?
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right at the moment of Order 66. So that obviously right away robs the moment of emotional stakes. But we know these characters, and when we hear the bloop, execute Order 66 moment, we know what's gonna happen, right? So the inclusion of Caleb here and Depa is interesting. I think a part of the reason they use these characters is because they had the models already, because they used them in the Clone Wars final season. They had a cameo appearance on the holo projector.
On the holocron,
yeah.
Or holo projector,
So that's cool. And a part of that is like, it just connects a few more dots. I know when people are like, that's upsetting or annoying because it's like shrinks the universe. This one I'm actually okay with, because it's not like, it's an incidental moment ultimately for these characters, and it's important for them. But who Depa Billaba is and who Caleb Dune is isn't important to the Bad Batch. All that's important is that they are a Jedi and a Padawan. It doesn't matter who they are. Right? So it's just a nod to us, and I'm fine with that. I liked this moment. I mean, so let me walk through this a little bit. So we meet up with Depa Billaba and her Padawan Caleb Dune, as well as the clone Captain Gray, who is technically clone Commander Gray in the comics, but because Caleb Dune's the commander, which we know is the chain of command based on how Ahsoka and Anakin work, they changed that, so he's a captain here.
Oh, okay.
And with the help of the Bad Batch, which is the group that we met in the final season of Clone Wars, Clone Force 99, they win a battle over a battle droid battalion in very stylish fashion. Depa Billaba says their exploits were quite impressive, which I would agree with.
Yeah.
And we get this kind of like really quick actiony moment where we see the Bad Batch kind of doing their thing, what they're really good at, right? And it's like a good what I said when I like tweeted out like my original thoughts on this episode was like, I thought it was a good reintroduction to these characters that I personally didn't think have a great initial showing in the Clone Wars. I go back to our review of that episode, and I liked them, but I didn't love them. I thought they were really like set in these like hard stereotypes and like overly simplified, right? In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think first two episodes give them a lot more nuance. What did you think of this kind of like reintroduction sequence and this battle sequence?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like, I was happy that they kind of started right before Order 66. So it was nice to see how the Bad Batch were involved in that and were not. But no, I really liked, but that, and I just thought it was very like classic Clone Wars fashion of like still kind of like jokey, funny, like Caleb slides down the thing and, tells the Captain Gray, they're like, oh, there's only 5. Yeah, there's only 5 of them. And he's like, only 5? Like, oh, we're done. He's like, yeah, you'd think so, but just wait.
You're right. Like, that is like, that really captures that like Anakin, Ahsoka, Rex feel. And like, so they are in some way kind of standing in for those characters in a similar way. And it totally works because, it's a very jovial atmosphere despite the fact that it's a war zone.
Yeah. Then you basically just see these like, 5 clones come crashing down a side of a hill, like just causing destruction as they come. So
they roll that boulder down the hill, which is a move we saw them do in the when we first saw them. I can't remember the name of that planet they're on when we first meet them, but like they use that same methodology of like rolling this giant boulder down a hill to take out a bunch of droids, and like, okay, cool. I guess that's like their go-to move, but like
so reckless.
Convenient that there's giant boulders around that they can move. That's convenient. So they introduced the Bad Batch. Okay, here's the thing. I don't recall if they introduced the theme for the Bad Batch in the Bad Batch episode of Clone Wars. I will tell you that if it's being reintroduced here, their actual theme is really, really good, and I think it's got kind of like a play off of like this Rebel Alliance kind of music that I've always really enjoyed, but never really gets a lot of love. So I think the Bad Batch theme music that plays here when they're taking out these battle droids is great, and it reappears later when they're in the training facility, and we get a lot of it in episode 2. So this is just another classic Star Wars theme created whole cloth by Kevin Kiner, who's composed all of Clone Wars, and he is really, I think, for my money, kind of should be the person who takes over for scoring all the big movies now that Williams is stepping down.
Right.
I just like that. That's my opinion. I don't maybe he's like, oh, he's too small time or whatever for them. If that's what they think, I think that's silly. I really think he's the man for the job. He's able to blend the themes of the older traditional music we know with completely new themes that I think just that fit really well with what we've already know and love about Star Wars. So
for sure, like it blends right in. Like I wouldn't have even noticed that it was different, right? That it's not that it's not different music, but to me, you pick up on those things a lot better than I do. But yeah, no, to me, I didn't even notice that it was like a different theme playing. I'm like, oh yeah, it's like, your go-to like Star Wars fight scene music.
But no, that's the Bad Batch theme, and it's actually the music that plays during the credits. So
that makes
probably
sense.
The music that you're going to hear, but when this episode starts, actually.
Yeah.
So I'll probably be putting that in. Yeah, I mean that's. I'll call it some different moments in terms of music and sound design later, but just something that jumps out at me. I'm a fan of the new theme. I don't always love a new character theme. This one I think really, really works. Okay. So as Captain Gray sends his men to launch a counterattack on another incoming battalion of battle droids, Tech theorizes, based on Republic intel, that the Clone Wars will soon be over. He mentions that Kenobi has engaged General Grievous on Utapau, and basically gives us, for what we already kind of knew, gives us a direct timeline. Right. Every time that anyone says, oh, General Kenobi's engaging General Grievous on Utapau, we know exactly when we are. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
So the Bad Batch asks if they have any orders, if they should do what they do, which it's very cliche. I'll just put it that way. But it reminds me of Wolverine. So Wolverine's classic line is that he's the best in the world at what he does, and what he does isn't very nice. Which is very similar to what they're saying here, which is like they just like to blow stuff up. They're really good at that. So
yeah.
Yeah. Caleb gets excited. He goes off with them. They're going to take on another battalion of battle droids. And at that moment, Order 66 is executed, and Depa Billab's clones turn on her, and it's pretty tragic. I think the music here is really good as well. As Caleb runs back to try to help her, she doesn't do the force push to push him away, but she basically just looks at him and says, "You must run," which is the line from the comic book, by the way. There's more to it in the actual comic book. I think she says we can't win this fight, you must run, but she just says you must run here. So they send her off, or they kill her in a off-screen kind of a little bit more PG fashion than maybe some of the the Jedi we've seen killed in Order 66.
Ayla Sakura,
where they just shoot her on the ground. That one sticks out to me as that is just so brutal. So
that's probably one of the most brutal ones. Yeah,
that probably happens here. We just don't see it. And so Caleb freaks out, and he runs off into the woods. Hunter and Crosshair go after him. Tech it meanwhile goes to talk to the regs, the regular clones, while Hunter kind of holds down the fort. While Wrecker holds down the fort.
Wrecker, yeah.
Tech tells them that tells Hunter that the situation is that there's apparently been a new order issued, Order 66, and it means that the Jedi have committed treason. And during this whole period, Hunter and Crosshair are searching for Caleb, and Caleb is trying to shoot him. Crosshair is trying to shoot. Yeah, he's trying to shoot him, and we know that he is like been, I don't know what's the word you want to say here, like affected by his programming, because he says good soldiers follow orders.
Yeah, as soon as he said that, my heart just dropped. I was like, oh, it's coming.
I never really liked him that much anyway. So.
No, well, obviously you're gonna make like the tall, like lanky, smarmy one, the bad one.
The one that's most like an Imperial officer. Yeah. No.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, so I really like this sequence because there is like this really, we understand the stakes right away. Like the clones are after him. We see that Hunter is confused, so we know right away that he's like not trying to kill Caleb, but Caleb doesn't believe that. He doesn't have any reason to believe that.
Oh, of course.
Meanwhile, you have Crosshair trying to shoot him, and it's like a really interesting dynamic. And I love the line here where when Tech says, "Oh, it says apparently the Jedi have committed treason," and Crosshair's like, "Well, that explains it."
Yeah,
and Hunter's like, "That doesn't begin to explain things."
Yeah, he's like, it doesn't at all.
Yeah. And so I really like this moment because it's just giving us another perspective on Order 66. Who would have thought I would want another one? This one wasn't as emotionally as effective maybe as the Clone Wars one, but that's not the point here. We're experiencing this in a more like clinical way, in a more kind of like military way. These are soldiers who are trying to understand why the rest of their soldiers aren't doing the things that they expected. And I think that is also another, like, something that's fascinating here. So where I'm really latching onto this is this idea of soldiers who are now being asked to do things that they don't want to do and having to disobey direct orders is always cool, right? But in this scenario where they don't actually have a choice, or a lot of them don't have a choice, I think it becomes even more fascinating because then you get these like brother versus brother type stuff, and we see that happen, later on in this exact episode. What do you think of this whole kind of bit here before we get to the moment where he jumps away?
Yeah, no, I agree with what you said there. It's that it adds another kind of dynamic to it that you don't necessarily think about when you have this other set of clones that aren't actually wired the same way as like the regs are, right?
Right.
So you actually get to see how, if they weren't wired that way, how they probably would have reacted.
Yeah. See, actually, you know what? That's a really great point, because while I was thinking about this, that exact kind of phrasing didn't really occur to me, because like you're right. Like and we kind of saw this same thing with Rex, in
like he struggled so hard,
right? Yeah. But like you imagine that if they had even a little bit of choice in the matter, it wouldn't have gone down like this, right?
No,
you're right. That's such a good point.
Yeah, you see how deep that programming is, where you're just like, oh man, like these are two guys that kind of came from the same thing, right? But Crosshair, just his chip or his inhibitor chip just works better for whatever reason than the other guys do.
And so Caleb keeps getting shot out of trees, and there's this moment where he like emerges and his robes are coming off and he's got his lightsaber. It's really cool. I think he looks really good here. I will just take this moment to quickly pause, because there's a shot here with Hunter and Caleb standing on the edge of this cliff, and there's a waterfall in the background. And I think this is the best that this animation has ever looked. And I know we keep saying that every time we get a new season of Clone Wars or whatever, but like I really think that they've taken a major step forward here. And I don't know if it's like, hey, Disney's like really footing the bill to really step up the quality of this, but holy shit, does it look truly amazing what they're doing with like these camera moves, these like depth of field, that you get these kind of like really soft gauzy backgrounds and these kind of like focus pulls where you're going from like focusing on Hunter's face to like focusing on Echo's face just slightly behind him, and then Hunter's face goes out of focus. And now these are simulations of what like a physical camera and physical lens would do, but they add to a cinematic feel in an animated production like this. You could have everything in focus if you want, and often they do in these shows. But when they choose to use like a really like a lens that has a soft focus like that, it really adds to the drama. It makes it feel more dramatic, and I think
for sure it does.
I think it looks so good. Like the way that they've like the smoke effects, the actual like textures themselves have got this like really like matted paint look to it. Like it's being like it was paint on canvas almost look. And I just think that like if you watch this show, it's in my opinion, it's of the same quality animation style or animation wise as any like blockbuster animation movie from like DreamWorks. Maybe not Pixar quality, maybe not quite yet, but like up there in terms of like you could make a full movie. Imagine, here's the thing: go back to the Clone Wars movie that we got, the original one that launched the animated series that we have now, and it looks like garbage, like actual poop. Like I wouldn't ask if anyone watched it. Like it looks really bad. Like it's muddied. There's like there's like very few actual assets. Like everything's very bland and boring and plain and like in this episode alone, you're going to multiple venues. You've got at least, well, it's really just 2 different locations. It's the one planet in Camino, but Camino looks like the movie version of Camino in a lot of ways, and it's like they've spared no expense. Like this looks like you could put this 90-minute episode in a movie theater, and I think it would make bank. Like I really do. I think people would come to see this and would be impressed. Maybe you add on an extra episode or 2 to make it feel a bit more movie-like. But I really do think that this is like we've reached the level here where Clone Wars, this style of animation, is equal to a motion picture animation quality. And if anyone's like, I don't really like animation, fair enough.
Yeah.
But I would say give it a shot because I think this is really, really good stuff.
Oh yeah, the quality's top notch for sure.
I already saw there's a Twitter account I follow called One Perfect Shot, which like takes a frame of a movie and like will say, oh no, it was directed by this, director of photography was this. Like its basic idea is like this is one really great frame and we want to like give it attention. We already saw one of them for Bad Batch, which had this like waterfall setting. I just think it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous. So Caleb and Hunter and Crosshair have a quick standoff as Crosshair keeps trying to kill him while Hunter tries to kind of talk him down. And so so Crosshair gets knocked out. Hunter and Caleb have this kind of brief exchange where Hunter tries to kind of like understand and kind of like, takes his helmet off, which I said from the very beginning, take your helmet off, dude. I was kind of yelling at the TV. And it's like, so he takes his helmet off. I'm like, oh, finally. He takes his helmet off and kind of like comes at him from like a human to human perspective. It looks like he's about to trust him, but then he hears a noise and Caleb like leaps over this massive ravine. And what I love about this moment is that they make this jump that Caleb does look to be like extremely impressive. Like, wow, that's so cool. Despite the fact that we see Jedi do shit like that all the time in the Clone Wars. But remember, this is from Hunter's perspective, and he doesn't see Jedi do that stuff very often.
No, especially he's a kid too, so you might be like, Padawans may not be as strong as like a full Jedi Knight, but yeah.
I just think that's like, and maybe I'm reading into it too much, but I think that's like a really cool like way that they gave it as perspective, was to be like, isn't this impressive that he was able to escape in this way? I thought that was cool. So Hunter lies. He says that he stunned Caleb when he jumped and he fell to his death. There's this moment later on where Crosshair's like, well, normally when someone looks at someone dying, they look down, not across. Like, okay, dude,
right?
Relax. And then even at that time, Hunter's like, listen, not everyone likes to watch them, watch it happen or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Not everyone likes to watch. Like, it's just like, okay, you fucking weirdo. Like,
yeah, right. Which, by the way, like the more like dumb shit that, or like obviously overly aggressive stuff that Crosshair does here, like the less I'm like, guys, like you guys aren't really picking up on this. Like, are you really that obtuse? Like, haven't you been working with this guy for this long? and you're not
Yeah,
noticing anything different here. Like,
you don't know that he's a fucking sociopath. But like...
yeah, like if he's always been a crazy person, then maybe, but like we don't know enough about them. It just we get the impression that he's acting differently than he normally does. But the rest of the group is like, man, you keep acting weird. Stop it. You know, like that's the extent of it. And I think like it's for dramatic reasons, but I think it gets right up to the line where it's like, this is kind of unbelievable now. You guys should really say something. And then they do. So
I think for them, it's kind of like, yeah, we know that you're kind of like an asshole, but like you're kind of going overboard now.
Right. Like this is one asshole move too far, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back at Kamino. And the Bad Batch arrive after a long time away. They say about 200 days, which they've been away for almost a year. And interesting, right? Happy to be home. Crosshair asks about Caleb again. He doesn't believe that he's dead. They're asked for a clearance code. And what's cool here, and I think this is maybe a subtle move, and they kind of call out to it here, but there's 2 V-Wing escorts that are assigned. That's the 2 ships that come out. The V-Wing is you only see the V-Wing like once in Revenge of the Sith, and it's after Order 66 happens. So you see 2 V-Wings fly in, I think, on Mustafar when the Emperor goes to collect Vader. He's all burnt up. That's like the only time you see them. They're technically a predecessor to what the TIE Fighter will be in some ways, but it's a cool little nod to like, yeah, these are the types of ships that are being used right now, and it like lines up perfectly with the timeline. So I think it's a fun move that they did that. So as for clearance codes, so we already get the impression that the things are a little bit more strict around here all of a sudden, right? As they arrive, they're surprised to see shock troopers / the Coruscant guard on Kamino. Hunter asks, like, what's going on? They're like, oh, the war's over. There's going to be an assembly later on. You better be there. And as they're having this conversation, 2 clones walk by with a dead body on a stretcher and a just to make sure nothing was subtle here, a lightsaber just falls off the gurney and lands on the ground. It's like, oof. I've watched a bunch of videos. I don't think anyone was able to identify that lightsaber. I don't know whose lightsaber that was, but
no, you can see a hand too, but it's too hard.
My assumption is it's what the heck is her name? She's the one that's typically with like on Kamino, so I imagine she's the one that died there. The one who's the same race as Ahsoka.
Shaak Ti?
Anyway, isn't it? Well, no, Shaak Ti dies
Shaak Ti has a million different like deaths, and we don't really know which one's canon yet.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. But I don't know. Typically, when we've gone to Kamino, including the arc where we were dealing with the chips, it was Shaak Ti that was dealing with all that stuff.
Yeah,
she was there. So,
but that's what I mean. That could be where Shaak Ti dies, because there's a bunch of different things.
Yeah, like there's a cut scene from Revenge of the Sith where Anakin kills her.
Yeah.
There's she dies.
Grievous kills her or something.
Yeah, Grievous kills her. There's a couple.
Yeah,
she dies.
There's a few different ways.
Grievous kills her in the Tartakovsky Clone Wars series as well. So I don't know. There's no right answer. I don't think that's who shot. Because I was looking to see if like her Leku or something were good. Like
I think you'd be able to see from the sheet, you'd be able to see her Montrails or her Lekus. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So probably not her, but another Jedi of some kind. Super dead. Is there a problem here? Yeah. There's a dead man right here. Okay, so they arrive back at their barracks, or they're on their way back to their barracks, and Hunter's like, "Man, the regs are really acting strange." But like Tech is like, "Are you sure? Let's ask." And they're like, "Get back in line." He's like, "Oh no, they seem pretty normal to me." So I guess the idea is that the regs have always treated them like shit. That's not the impression I got from the Clone Wars, though.
Bullies, but
yeah, I guess like the ones who are coming right off they're on Kamino and they're coming right off the assembly line, are like a little fresh, they're like they don't have that personality, I guess. So
yeah.
Okay, so they arrive back at their barracks. They discuss what happened with the other clones and explain to the audience, explain to us basically that why they weren't included in Order 66. One of the first things that everyone was worried about or concerned about was, are they going to take part in Order 66? Personally, I think it would have been really cool if they had taken part in Order 66. That would have been a different type, and like things that could have played out a very similar way afterwards, I think, in some sort of different means. maybe a little bit too dark for our show to start with our heroes murdering Jedi, but
yeah, that's true.
We got our answer. We got our answer. They didn't take part there because of their genetic alterations. The control chip didn't have the same effect on some of them, right?
Right.
They also addressed right away. They're doing this thing where they're trying to get ahead of the audience. So like, what about Echo? He's a
I know.
I'm like, do we really need to do this? Like,
when I heard it, I was thinking, I was like, immediately in my brain, I was like, oh, Jules is gonna hate how nicely they like parceled this all up for the audience.
Honestly, fair enough. Like, whatever. Like, it's one scene and it's an hour and a half long episode, so like, I'm not really gonna be that upset about it. Like, but it does really smack to like just being, this is exposition. Please understand what's happening, right? It's like, okay, fair enough. And so Echo is immune because he's more machine than man, which I actually appreciate because that's like a line from the original series, which he's more machine than man now.
Right.
So I think that's cool, but the rest of it is like let's move on. Let's get along with it here, But there is this really good exchange, and there's a bunch of these that happens throughout this episode, like at least 3, maybe 4, maybe 5, between Hunter and Crosshair as they like kind of like have these kind of standoffs where they're having these almost debates over what's the right decision, right, to make. And Crosshair's talking about like orders are orders, and like Hunter's like, since when? Like, we've never given a shit about orders. Like, and I think that's like a really fun way of like getting us to understand what their dynamic was, right, in a really short form. So I appreciate that at least.
Yeah.
What do you think of this kind of like reintroduction to Kamino, them arriving back? Anything that stands out to you? I thought it looked really good, at least.
Yeah, I thought it looked really good, and it still just gives me like, it's such a weird switch from, you see the clones all throughout the Clone Wars, and I just feel like as soon as Order 66 happens, they just look like stormtroopers. Like immediately, it's like their body like language
it's their body
changes,
language.
and it's such a weird switch that I don't know. It's subtle, but not at the same time. Like, I just find that it's, I don't know. It's just the way they hold themselves, where they're holding their guns, the way they're walking. Like, it's just different. They're so much more like,
it's cold.
It's much colder. Yeah.
And like I find that in episode 2 especially, and when we get there, but like when we have the clones kind of on a planet, they're away from Coruscant or places we know, like an outpost, and it feels a lot more like Rebels now, where you've got them like on street corners and like everyone's like looking over their shoulder, and maybe it's a little bit like they're emphasizing that, but you're right. Like the clones really do look like those jackbooted like soldiers that everyone was worried about, that like when Saw Gerrera was like, yeah, what happens later, like what happens when the war's over, then what happens? He's like, well, this now, he's like, he was right, turns out the whole time. So you're right. There's a distinct difference, and there's a warmth that, even though I don't think that came through in our first introduction to the Bad Batch, but when we meet them this time and we spend more time with them, there really is a warmth here, and I think it really comes through when you meet Omega for the first time.
Yes, definitely.
So they go to this assembly, and this is the assembly on the status of the Republic. And so we see, I really loved it. It's really short, but I love it. This speech of Chancellor Palpatine, one of maybe the most overwrought, overacted, overwritten speeches of all time in cinematic history, right? And like, it's absolutely, it's terrible, but it's really cool because I like it now. So just from a nostalgic point of view. So like hearing, Ian McDiarmid's performance from Revenge of the Sith coming over this hollow projection of the Emperor's face is, I think, pretty effective. And though it's pretty short, basically it's like, what's going on? Oh, the Republic is now the Empire now. Again, we're really doing a lot of catching up here for people who may not have really who didn't know maybe some of this stuff. And then like as soon as he says the first galactic empire, the Imperial March plays, which I think obviously is not subtle but very, very cool. What did you like this moment where they're in the
I
assembly.
enjoyed it. And it was creepy though too, because you see all the clones like kind of cheering, and then the Bad Batch
Hmm.
is kind of just standing there like looking at each other, being like, "What the fuck?" Like,
Right. Like, you sure
like
they're not
oh,
programmed? Yeah. Right. Because they're
yeah,
already
and
having that conversation at that point.
yeah, and then they're just like empire. Like even to them, they're like, "What do you mean it's now a galactic empire? Like that's a bad thing. Like this
Right.
isn't a
Well,
good thing."
like, so here's the thing. Like, to them, they're not really sure what it means, right? So the next exact
Right.
scene is them walking through the halls of Camino, and it's Crosshair saying Republic, Empire, what's the difference? And
What's
there
the
is a
difference?
lot
Yeah.
there's a lot of that in Star Wars from like the kind of the middle management folks
Yeah.
of the galaxy,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like, to them, it's really not that different. Like, they're getting orders from sort of some central government somewhere to
Mhm.
execute some stupid rule that they probably think is dumb, but no one's ever going to listen to them, right?
Right.
So to
Yeah.
them, it's like they don't like it is there is no difference. But I love, like, right away, Tech is like, well, the mass execution of the Jedi is a pretty big one for me. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's a pretty good line. I like that. I think that's a really subtle. I mean, like, maybe not subtle, but I think like it feels like a natural line of dialogue, and nothing that feels less forced than some of the stuff that we heard in the more exposition-y scene, like just one scene ago.
No, for sure. I even love like there's and they do break it up with a little bit of comedy here and there too, right? Because there's like
Yeah.
when he's talking about how he's been left horribly disfigured, and Wrecker's
Right.
just like, "You got that right." Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
just
I have been deformed. And he's like, ugh.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just not even quiet, like
Yeah, I like that too. They're just having this, like, really, I think, fairly treasonous conversation, like,
yeah, just in the middle of
in
them.
in the middle of an assembly where there's like clones within like 3 feet of them, like,
Yeah.
surrounded by them, and like whatever, because they don't really understand the context of what's going on at this point. So like, and neither really do the clones. So it's fine, but it is kind of funny when you look at it. Like, they're really just standing in this room full of clones, and they're just talking about how stupid it is. But like, I
Right.
guess that's kind of normal for them. That's the impression we get, is that they were always kind of like, fuck these guys, the regs, right? Um,
Yeah.
so we are then introduced to Omega. She's a young girl, and we already talked about her accent, but I think it's important to note that she does have not Australian, sorry, a Kiwi accent here, and that's important because so do the rest of the clones. So
Right.
they
Yeah.
play this like, hey, she could be just any young girl, but turns out she is actually a clone. We find that out later on.
I feel like I knew
When
that immediately. The second I saw her and she opened her mouth, I'm like, yeah, it's female Boba Fett. Like she looks like a girl version of Boba Fett. She has the same face as young Boba Fett, same
right,
accent. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. To me, it was like, oh, she's a clone. Like I thought that immediately, but
So I
I
think
don't know.
I think, again, to the normies maybe out there, they didn't maybe pick
Maybe,
up on that
yeah.
right away. I also didn't pick up on it right away, like first scene maybe, but like as it
Yeah.
like by the second time I talked to her, I'm like, oh yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Like,
As soon
what is
as
she
she
doing
sounded
here?
like them, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. I'm like, I guess they just genetically modified her to be female, and then there's probably something else. Like we'll figure it out.
Right.
We'll
Yeah.
see it
She's like,
eventually, but
for the record, I think it's really fucking cool that there's a female clone. Like, it's like
yeah.
we've had the
Yeah.
same. It's been a million dudes, literally millions of the same dude, and
Yeah.
now we get one version of that same dude, but she's a girl. And like, what does that mean? Like, how is that?
Yeah.
How does that change her life? And like, obviously, there's a whole other big mystery here, but like,
Yeah.
the fact that she
It's
is a
like,
girl, I think, is pretty cool.
yeah, why is her hair blonde? But
Well,
it's one of them.
why does Tech have receding hairline while
Yeah,
Hunter's
I guess
hair is
that's true.
lush and long, right?
I
Like,
guess that's true. It's part of the defect.
I think they introduced my speculation is, or this is my headcanon for like why some clones have like seemingly different like hairlines and stuff,
Mhm.
is that I think that the Kaminoans introduce like a random element into the genome, so
Probably,
that you don't
yes.
have like, so to create like, so it's a little bit more natural. So like, some
Yes,
clones
yeah.
might have a little bit of this or a little bit of that, but like
Mhm.
nothing so dramatic that they don't look exactly the same.
No, it's like,
you
oh,
know?
some can grow beards, some can't, some have
Right.
sideburns. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's
right.
fair.
Like cut sideburns where they're like growing out the side of it. He's got these like big honking like lamb chops growing off the
Yeah.
side of his face.
Yeah.
Uh
I did see some speculation on people being like, "Is she force sensitive?" I'm like, "I don't know how they would do that."
100% she is force sensitive.
You
That's
think?
100%. They use the term, um what the hell do they say? She's really intuitive. She's very intuitive. They keep saying that
Intuitive,
over
yeah,
and
and
over and over again.
curious.
Right.
But I'm just like,
But
how do you? Okay, so does she have like Palpatine DNA in
we
her? Were they
don't
already
let's
doing that,
see.
or
That's the rub, right? Like, how does that? What
yeah?
does that mean?
I hope they
And
took
like,
Obi-Wan DNA and made her.
why? What
I
a
don't know.
weird thing to say. Like, why would they need her? Why would they need Obi-Wan's DNA?
I
Because they
don't
need
know,
like
to make
force
her
sensitive
force
people.
sensitive, because you
But
can't
why
just
would that make her
clone.
female? I don't know. That's weird.
I don't know,
I
just to mix things up a bit.
Right. So
I don't
I
know.
think they are teasing the fact that she is force sensitive. She might not know that, but I think that's what's coming here. But
I
we'll
thought you
get into
can't
some of those
clone
hints.
force sensitivity though.
Maybe you can't, but we also see
Oh,
that Snoke. There's all these Snoke and Palpatine stuff that's introduced in the
yeah,
in the worst Star Wars movie.
yeah,
So like we have
it's
to
true.
deal with that, and like if this is like an interesting way of kind of speaking to the same, like I thought the Grogu thing was more in line with that, but maybe this is kind of in that same
Right.
vein. So
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see.
What I like is that like maybe these are very like variances on a theme, right? So you have
Mm-hmm.
the Grogu version of this story, right? That kind of started at the same place, but because Grogu takes so long to age, um, coming into their abilities later on, and like because Grogu was trained at the temple for a short time, so I
Right.
guess the timeline is similar enough because I guess she's born close to the end of the war. Grogu's born close to the beginning of the
Right.
war, right? But again, because of the kind of the way he ages,
He ages. Yeah.
it's a kind of a. But either way, it's a similar idea. These force sensitive
Right.
clones, right? And their space dads who have to deal with them, right? Like I think,
Yeah.
and like how do they handle those situations differently? And like I think that if that's what we're doing here, I'm on board for it. I'm not going to be annoyed that it's like, we've seen this already. This is a
Right.
obviously different experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So I guess the number one question is, does Omega annoy you? Because I know a lot of people are like, she's just gonna be annoying. I don't think she was annoying. At
No,
least
she's
she's much less annoying than Ahsoka was when we first introduced her. I'll tell you that.
yeah.
Right?
No, she's just a little girl. Like, are you annoyed by children in general? Then yeah, you're probably annoyed by her. But
Yeah, maybe. I guess. I don't know. Like, I think especially in episode 2, I think the performance by the voice actress is, I think, next level great. Like, in terms of what they're doing there. I don't know. Like, there is something to this, the way that they've set up this dynamic, and it's kind of this like. It's sure maybe it's a father-daughter dynamic, but I think it's more like an older brother, younger sister dynamic.
yeah, really. I get more of like a brotherly, right? Yeah, for sure.
But there is still parenting. An older brother still has to do often has to do some sort of parenting themselves. We'll get into that again more in episode 2, where that's kind of like really the highlight. Right. Okay, so where were we? We are then reintroduced to Grand Moff Tarkin. He, at this point, is not Grand Moff. He's ranked Admiral. He's an Admiral Tarkin at this point. And he arrives on a very Imperial-style shuttle. He's here to determine the value of continuing the clone production program. He has this meeting with the Kaminoans, Lama Su, and who's the other one? Anyway, it'll come to me. I've written it down somewhere. The Prime Minister.
Prime Minister? Yeah,
the Prime Minister. And how they're talking about I actually like this because although it's really short, it like ties a bow really quickly on are clones better than stormtroopers? They've always have been, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Rebels touched on it, obviously, right?
Right.
They're better armor, better training, everything. And like so they're Tarkin's talking about how they don't need a full army like the clones, because they can draft an army, or they can recruit an army, right? For half the cost, right?
Yeah.
And Prime Minister's like, well, yeah, there won't be as good though. And he's like, well, I'll be the judge of that.
Be the judge of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
I love that. It's like that subtle like nod of like always making fun of how shitty stormtroopers are, and like why their aim is so bad, and like why they suck. And it's like,
it's funny
because
like, they have to do the work. Like they're like, oh yeah, they're brutal, so we have to constantly acknowledge that and explain why that is.
Yeah.
Because it makes no sense. So it's really, I think you're right. It is funny.
Yeah.
So also, by the way, I think Tarkin is always a fun character to have involved in any story.
Yeah.
So we have Tarkin here, and he's like already, You know when you get those people who are like, who've already made up their mind, but they have to go through the motions of pretending like they are going to make a choice, right? This is Tarkin to a T. He's already made up his mind. He doesn't like he didn't like clones to begin with, and now he has the opportunity to get rid of them. And despite how maybe talented they are, he's going to overlook that, and that's going to be the end of things for clone production. That being said, I am really stoked to see, and I don't know if we'll see it. I mean, maybe they won't, and maybe the story won't concentrate on it. But I think if any story is going to, this is the one that needs to show us what happens to Kamino and what happens to that to everything, like the cloning facility and production around now when they shut down clone production. What happens? And in Star Wars Legends, there's like a clone rebellion as they fight against the Empire to kind of like stay alive, basically.
Right.
I would be surprised if it plays out in that same way, but I would love to see kind of like one last return to Kamino as like maybe like starships, and Star Destroyers are coming in to like maybe blast it to all hell or something.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, I saw some theories too where they're like, oh, like, Omega is like Sidious, whatever, genetics somehow, and then they lose her, so he's pissed, so he just blows them up.
I think there's more to it than that, and I like how the Prime Minister, like later on in this episode at the end, she's like, well, until we know what the Empire's like motivations are, we're gonna kind of keep things under like tight wraps,
Yeah.
So we get this mess hall scene. Wrecker doesn't like that he's programmed, or doesn't like to accept that he's been programmed. Omega joins them for food. They're surprised that she would want to sit with them, and she's like, I like you. You don't really fit in here around here either. And I think that's hilarious because like the idea of not fitting in to when the community is either like fish aliens or literally the same person over and over again is pretty funny. Like, I don't know if they wrote that line as a joke, but that's pretty, like, I laughed. I think that's hilarious.
No, but you got to think of it from her point of view. Is she's the only girl, so she doesn't fit in. Like, you have all these other little,
are also girls, to be fair, but I don't know how that works. I think
all
maybe
of them?
they're unisex.
I don't think they all are.
I don't know how that
works.
The
Prime Minister seemed male, and then the other one seemed female to me, but who knows?
Maybe. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's just because one of them was like different colored than the other, but
you're probably
the Prime Minister guy looked more blue and he had a deeper voice. But
you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know. Yeah. With her, she's just like, oh, yeah, I'm the only like female kid here.
Right.
And I just hang out with the aliens all day.
I love when Hunter's like, don't you have some parents or something you need to, like, you should be hanging out with it? And she's like, parents? Yeah. And he's so slow to pick it up. Like he does not notice that she's like confused by the even concept of parents, which I think is very adorable. Like this, he's a little dense when it comes to all things not being a soldier. And then like we get some clones walk by and they're like, oh, another addition to the sad batch. And I'm like, holy shit, that's a pretty good jab. Like, really funny.
Yeah.
But they have a food fight, and it's such an intense food fight that it leaves Echo in the infirmary.
Yeah, they just get in a brawl. Because Wrecker throws a full tray of food at the back of the guy's head.
Yeah, that would piss me off too. And so Echo wakes up in the infirmary and he freaks out from the scanning. Oh, so I like this little subtle moment because he's obviously does not want to be experimented on anymore.
Oh, of course not. He's got legit PTSD.
Yeah. And Omega's there and she helps calm him down and she's like, I get it. I don't like being hooked up to their machines too. Another hint that she's special in some way. Right. And there's also, by the way, this like medical robot. We've actually met this droid before in the Clone Wars during that whole Fives chapter where they do with the chip.
The chip,
I'm a fan of this droid, by the way. I think he's very
cool. I like him too. He's funny.
Yeah.
I love when he tells them they're defective.
Yeah, like I know, and like I'll let you sit on that information. I know it's quite shocking. Yeah. And then I also like when he's so like cute. Random detritus and like garbage around. Like I'm just like this guy's very funny character.
He's great.
How you know that the show is taking a more quote unquote serious kind of tone is that this character get a back seat almost immediately. Gets reintroduced here, some stupid chain of like he doesn't get to give his like short name like he normally does. Like he's just like
Right. It's just all his numbers.
all these numbers, and like he only appears for a couple scenes and then gets shot it like
Yeah.
halfway through. So
Yeah,
although
yeah.
with a stun one, so he doesn't just get shot and killed at least. So Echo tells the crew that he's familiar with Tarkin. He first of all he found out that it is Tarkin. He's the Imperial that's on Kamino to judge the clones, and he's actually worked with Tarkin before, and he left him for dead at the Citadel, and it got him nearly killed, right? And he doesn't like clones, right? He's like not a fan of clones. We should be careful around him. They get called by the Prime Minister. They think they're going to get in trouble, but it turns out they're actually being summoned to be tested in front of Tarkin. The music ramps up here again. I think the score is very good. There's this like deep bass that builds up right, even though when they're in the hallway, they haven't even got into the testing chamber yet. And the simulation starts off like fairly normally, but Tarkin feels like this isn't really what he wants to see, so he wants to up the stakes and ask for live rounds. And so whatever, cool enough. Just that line in and of itself is pretty cool. But then when we found out that they're actually Death Trooper droids,
yeah, right, or like prototypes
them,
or something,
you're like, oh wow, okay, dope, right?
Yeah. No, I thought that was cool.
And then right away, Wrecker gets shot. Multiple. He often gets shot. So he gets shot, and they have to go pick him up. The squad regroups and improvises a solution to take out the droids. Hunter uses hand signals here. So this is again an example of how like they're really tight as a group.
Right.
They reprogram.
Wrecker doesn't understand them.
Yeah, that is also good. So here's like I really didn't like Wrecker at the beginning. Like even this episode coming out of episode 1, I'm like, man, Wrecker, you're like, I get that you're like the big softy, but like
big dumb,
big dumb softy, but like you could be a little less dumb, like that's like that was my kind of thinking. But he is a little bit less dumb in episode 2.
Yes.
And I kind of they kind of even out, like the rough edges kind of get smoothed off, and they kind of feel more like regular people.
It's more like it takes him like an extra minute to get certain things. It's like, oh, okay, like
yeah, like he has like he's not mentally well. Like the fact that he's a soldier at all is crazy. Like if we had a soldier like that in the real world, I would hope that they would be honorably discharged and be like, you're not fit for duty.
Yes.
But no. Instead, he's like, oh, you're strong, so we'll just have you blow everything up, right? But despite the fact that he doesn't really understand the context, or like he doesn't really understand what's going on, and it's kind of sad. But I think they even it out later on, so that makes me feel better. Any thoughts on this kind of this simulation sequence? It's fairly long. But
it is long,
it's fine. Yeah.
No, it was good. Like it's that typical, again, like Clone Wars action scene, right? Like it gets to the point where Crosshair's shooting a dagger into someone.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. That is, you're right.
Yeah. So it's like those kind of like they do things different. Like those guys don't do, and like you kind of see that through the conversation from the Kaminoans. Yeah. And Tarkin, they're like, like she basically explained to Tarkin, she's like, these soldiers just do things a little unorthodox.
Yeah, they're just not, they're not your usual clones, right?
I do like to see just how they're a little more like, she seems to care about them. Like it's not to them, it's not just property. They're not just clones. Like she's kind of saying like, are you sure? Like, I don't think we should be doing live rounds.
I love the line is like, I have to protest.
Yeah.
Like, they're like,
but I do
this
think
is
that
obviously a bad idea.
I do think that they have like some love for those guys and they care about them. It's not just property to them.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends on the Kaminoan you're talking about. I think
I guess
Sue in this case, I think has some like affinity, but I think in a lot of the cases, I think the Kaminoans look at them as property, and like they're like not only property but like their own IP, that like they're like the secret of the cloning technology is theirs. They don't want anyone to know about it.
Right.
Like that's their secret sauce, and that a clone in the wrong hands is, potentially like a legal issue.
Right.
So like there's like it's a bit more complicated. I am interested, like, what do you think Tarkin's like motivations are here? Like he's like, these 5 clones sure might be talented, but like they don't represent all clones, like and I'm sure they were doing other testing, I'm sure. But
no, I think maybe he's a little bit more interested in the genetic defects or the
Mm-hmm.
genetic changes that they have, and thinking, okay, well, maybe if they
We
can
can do
do
more
more
like
of
this.
these,
Yeah.
yes, if we can do, if if these guys are super effective and we can do more genetic variances and beef them up,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we have something and maybe we'll continue.
Or
But
maybe he's thinking like, well, I already know we're going to strap the regular clones, but maybe we can keep these ones as like a special unit or something.
yes,
Like
exactly.
right.
Something kind of like, okay, well, can you
Yeah.
make me better ones? Like you have
Right.
these ones already, but can you make me ones that are like all crazy huge, but also smart, but also,
Right. Yep. Totally. 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 Um. Okay. Tarkin wants to know more about Clone Force 99. There's only so this is funny here. So this sequence takes place in another chamber. Tarkin is asking the Prime Minister, I think Orlama Sue say, one of them about the special clones, and then Tech references this conversation later as if they were there. But I don't know if it's just shot weird. But like I didn't think that they were like in the room when this conversation's happening. But I
okay.
could be wrong because he represent like she says there's only 5 remaining. You're like, oh well, there's 5 of the Bad Batch, or
Yeah.
so like that makes perfect sense, right?
It's very easy to, yeah, miss that, but
Right, and I think they do that on purpose, right?
yes, of course.
And he's impressed, but he's worried that they're not obedient enough. Classic
Right.
Tarkin. No one ever listens to him enough.
Yeah.
He asks if they completed Order 66, which again, what I like about the
Mhm.
show is that it's not beating around the bush. It's like all the questions that we would like ask first or think about first as someone who's like intimate with this knowledge. We would ask the same question: did they
Yeah.
execute Order 66? And they're like, well, we have to believe they did because the general and the Padawan were reported dead, right?
Right.
Um, Tarkin's less willing to believe that. Apparently, Crosshair submitted a counter report believing that the Padawan was still alive. So I like
Mhm.
more kind of evidence that we already knew Crosshair was already turned, but come on, this is kind of like really putting a nail in the
Oh,
coffin
you
here.
know what? You know how I think they know about this conversation? It's because Omega's standing there during that conversation.
Oh, okay, so
And
maybe she
she
told him
goes,
about it,
yeah, and
right?
she goes back and talks to Hunter and them after that.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so. I
Probably
don't know.
how
He
Tech
talks
knows.
about it like he was there. I don't know. I
Yeah,
thought
fair enough.
it stood out as like that's weird. I mean, maybe I'm misremembering, but
Yeah.
um, so they go back to their barracks, and Wrecker and Tech are pissed about being used, having live rounds used on them, and then
Right.
Tarkin arrives and sends the clones to Onderon to take out quote unquote insurgents intent on keeping the galaxy at war unquote.
Right.
And as they're trying to leave, like Tech and Echo are having like. By the way, I like that Tech and Echo have kind of a relationship as kind of being like one's a computer and one's really good with computers. So
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
And so he's like, "Have you got any more intel on these insurgents?" They're like, "No, all the Imperial records are like locked down tight." And it's like if they're sending them on this mission, like it's weird that they wouldn't give them intel. So like right away, that's another like red
Yeah. Of
flag, you know.
course. Yeah.
Um, but like ultimately, we know that Tarkin's this is just a means of like testing their loyalty, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so they are about to leave, and Omega like runs in, like wait, and warns Hunter and Tarkin about Tarkin, and that he's out to get them. That he's like that she doesn't trust him, and this is another line where it's like her intuition is like very spot on, right?
Right.
Um, and she wants to come with them, and doesn't she doesn't feel safe in Camino, like on Camino, and she tells them that they need to leave Camino. Hunter at this point still not like he hasn't fully bought in, right? So he's like has this kind of like brief conversation, and I do really like that. Like there's like he right away picks up on like there's something special about her. Like there's
Right. Yeah.
something's interesting here. So he like comes down to her level, has a conversation. Like change is hard. We're gonna have to get used to it. I'm sure it's all gonna work out, right? And she's like, okay, I don't really believe you, but I'll take your word for it. Like I'm not gonna just sneak up onto the ship, not yet anyway.
Yeah.
So she leaves and they head off onto Onderon, and I really like that like they use this setting because we're familiar with it and there's characters here that we know. So the squad arrives on Onderon at night and they head into the jungle to do a convert scan for the insurgents. And as they're looking for droids, as they'd expect to be, because that's what they're used to fighting, they're shocked when they discover that the insurgents actually have like women and children with them, and they're not droids at all, but they're people. What did you make of this kind of revelation and how they kind of handled it?
Yeah, I mean, I found it just kinda sad, like, they go there and they're thinking it's gonna be separatist droids, and then they see, like, literal women and children and
Hmm.
just regular people, so you kinda see that set in Hunter being like, "Man, like, we got set up to come here," and
Do you
I
think
think
that's what
they know
he's?
they're being tested.
Do you think
I
that?
feel
So
like
do you
he
think
kinda
Hunter's like
knows.
right away like fuck this? Like this isn't like I didn't sign up for this in the
I
sense
yeah,
that like
oh, for sure. I kinda get
yeah
the thing that he's, like even maybe there's a little bit of doubt in his mind, like, this can't be who we're here to kill. Like,
right
there's gotta be in his brain, he's probably trying to rationalize it, like, these can't be the people we're looking for, it's gotta be somebody else. Like, there's gotta be
right
separatists somewhere.
he's willing to like give them the benefit of the doubt at first, which
Yeah,
is more
and
than
be
what
like
Crosshair's willing to
yeah,
wants to do. Right,
Crosshair
finish
literally
the
tees up
mission.
the oldest woman he can in his
Yeah, he's
sights.
like, well, this
It's
person's
like,
not gonna get out of my.
"Okay,
They're not gonna
yeah."
get away.
Like, just the most non-threatening person down there, and that's who
Right.
he's, like, sighting up first. I was like, "Holy."
And oh, like Crosshair's really good, but as soon as he becomes a bad guy, he becomes less good, which
Yeah.
I think a problem in like if he is truly like a great marksman, like we need to see that and we need to see him use
True.
that against the heroes. Like you know what I mean?
My
Like
only my only counter to that is maybe part of him isn't trying to kill them yet.
yet.
Like,
Well,
maybe
I don't
there's
know.
still that small part of him being, like, holding him back a little bit from, like, taking kill shots as opposed to taking, like, maim
Right.
and capture shots.
He shoots later on, he shoots Wrecker in the shoulder, right?
Yeah.
So
When it's like he
but
could have probably headshot him, but he shot him in the shoulder. So you're thinking
his
like,
helmet
"Okay,"
does come
like
off in that
yeah,
scene too, yeah.
that's
Yeah,
true.
maybe.
So I'm like, I'm just wondering if maybe they are leaving room for a redemption arc or
Mhm.
they can save him somehow, but
I hope not. I think it's
yeah.
more interesting. I really like. I think it's more interesting if that's not the case. Really, I do. I mean, I like.
Yeah.
I didn't. Again, I didn't really like him that much, but I think he's way cooler
Right.
as a villain. Like
Yes, makes a
generally,
great villain.
like he's just like this. Really, it's again cliche. This idea of like a member of your team who's turned to the other side and they're now hunting you and they
Mhm.
know all your secrets. Like that's
Yeah.
really cool. And I think if
Yeah.
this like if they have like a change of heart at the end, like or something, I don't. I mean, maybe they capture him and they like remove his chip or something.
That's
But
what I
again,
was
I
thinking,
think that's
something more on
not.
that line, but
I just don't think it's that interesting. I just don't like.
yeah.
I don't think that makes the show better. Is my thinking on
Right. Yeah, yeah.
that. So Hunter tells them to stand down, but Crosshair wants to finish the mission, and
Yeah.
it's all moot because they're captured by the quote unquote insurgents. Echo tells the squad that they've actually been captured by Republic fighters. Now I don't remember if Echo was actually there when they were training the Onderonians in the Clone Wars. I feel like
Yeah, I'm
he
not too
must not have
sure.
been because he probably would have recognized them right away, or like as soon as they mentioned they're going to Onderon, he'd probably be like, "Oh, we'll go see Saw" or whatever. He probably
Right,
wasn't. I
yeah.
have to assume he wasn't there, or his memory's been messed up more than he doesn't remember it or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
Um, so they get there and they're like walked into this camp under guard, and Saw Gerrera introduces himself. I think he looks really cool here. They're kind of doing this kind of slow transition from the Saw we know in Clone Wars to the Saw we know in
Yeah.
Rebels to the Saw we know in Rogue One.
Yeah, he gets a
And
little bit more gruff every time you see him.
yeah, yeah, right. And I
Yeah.
think like he's actually still fairly like chill here, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, it's true.
um, I think a more grizzled Saw would not have let them go. I just put it
No,
that way,
probably not.
you know.
Yeah.
And so he's talking about how he's like they sent you to kill us. It makes you wonder what else they're lying about, right?
Right.
And he, I struggle because I think that every time you give conspiracy theorists like a win in media, I think it like reinforces the idea that conspiracy theories are like off or right and stuff in real life, and that's not
Yeah.
true. And it's not
No.
true. So like in this case though, Saw Gerrera is right. He was a conspiracy theorist and he was right all along. Um,
Right.
so like I have mixed feelings about that, but whatever. We already knew that, so it doesn't really bother me. So he's talking about how like, man, like the war, you know, the quote unquote Clone War might be over, but a civil war is about to begin, right? And really, what he's talking
Mhm.
about is the beginning of the rebellion.
Right.
And anytime we can see kind of those like really initial inklings of it, obviously get excited because it'll lead into the things we know, including the stuff we know in Rebels. So, what do you make of this conversation between Saw and Hunter here?
I liked it. Like I think they were both very much on common ground, and I think Saw realized that too, because they're creeping up on them, right? So I feel like Saw understands that Hunter was hesitant, and they were hesitant because they could have just
Right.
shot them all immediately. So I think he is realizing, like, okay, we need to be on common ground with these guys, and we need to talk to them, and maybe get them on our side, and kind of have them as allies for this new rebellion, right?
Yeah, and there's this interesting line here where he talks about how these people are now refugees, and like,
Right.
I don't really know like what that means in context of Star Wars. Like, were they not living on Onderon before? And, like, what makes them a refugee now versus what they when the Clone Wars was actually going on? Like, I don't really
True.
know how that works to be honest. But it certainly sounds bad. So I guess that's all that matters here. They're now like they're basically outcasts. Despite the fact that the Republic helped build them up, they are now kind of on their own, right?
Yes.
And I just think they walk off into the darkness, and it gets so dark. And by the way, this is an example of how the animation's gotten really well, because the lighting's really good. As they walk away with their like torch, the light gets like dissipates, and it gets super dark. And then we see the Viper droid for the first time there.
Yeah.
And so they, Crosshair wants to, again, they get back to their ship, and he's like, no, we should have finished them off. He's like, we don't know they were innocent. All this stuff. He basically insinuates that he should be the one leading the squad, right?
Right. Yeah.
And as they're having this argument, Hunter takes out that Viper droid, or the probe droid that was been following them, and it reveals that Tarkin was spying on them the whole time, right? I love the line where like, the Jedi didn't do that. He's like, well, that as far as we know from Crosshair, like, okay, dude. Yeah. And then so Hunter brings up that Omega warned them. He's like, oh shit, Omega was right? And so Tech is like, well, she's a clone, so of course she was right, and she has great intuition, right? And then there's another line again, and then so this is basically where the show reveals that she is a clone to the squad, and the rest of the squad's like, what? That's crazy, right? And Hunter's like, well, she's one of us, so we have to go back and get her, right?
Get her, yeah.
She's in trouble. So I really liked. I'm like, okay, now this is a whole different mission. They're like, in the span of like 2 minutes, they go from being on like, oh, excited to be on another mission and like in their element, to being completely out of their element, being like, okay, well, I guess we're deserting, and I guess we're gonna have to go pick up another defective clone. Like, we can't leave them behind. I just think it's like he just makes the decision, and he's not weighing it. Like, it's he's doing what he thought was right. And,
there's no like discussion in his mind about it.
I didn't like. Maybe they should have spent a little bit more like maybe giving the audience, like really revealing to the audience, like there's some real weight to this decision, that it's second you decide. Well, I guess the second they shot that probe droid or didn't finish their mission, they kind of knew, but like
pretty
adding
much
some gravitas there would have been I think maybe would have helped. I just like that it's like, no, we're not messing around. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So they get back to Camino. Anything else you want to say about that before we move on, I guess?
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay. So we get back to Camino, and Omega explores the Bad Batch barracks, and she gets caught by a shock trooper as the clones are like clearing out all their stuff. And the squad arrives back just in time to get captured, basically. It's one of those like it's quiet, too quiet moments, right? So the plan is to like give us the stakes. What's important here? The plan is to find Omega, get back to the ship, right? That's the strategy.
Right.
As they enter the hangar, they're ambushed by more shock troopers, and Tarkin arrives and says the Empire does not tolerate failure, accuses them of treason, which is a line that is like very Imperial. Basically, if you do anything that they don't agree with, you're committing treason, and the penalty for treason is death, obviously. Which I bet, like the line he says, you must be very familiar with the penalty for treason, because that's what they accuse the Jedi of, right?
Yes, yeah.
So I it's like a subtle like, I know you didn't commit Order 66 here, because if you did, you'd have more. Whatever, it doesn't matter. He's just kind of egging them on.
Yeah.
The squad is stripped of all their gear, and I always think it's hilarious when the clones are just in their bodysuit.
Oh yeah.
Going on. It's like, it's very tight. I think it's very funny.
Just in their little underwear. Yeah, they're like Under Armour suits.
Exactly. A unitard.
Yeah.
So the squad is stripped of all their stuff, and they find Omega is also in the brig. And I love this is where I start like really falling in love with Omega because I think I love her reaction. She is 100% stunned, shocked, could not believe that anyone would come back for her. She was like, "Well,
Yeah.
excuse me, what? You came back for me? That is crazy." Right?
Yeah.
So like here's the thing. I don't know how old, like how long she's been alive. Like I imagine like I know they
Yeah.
have the accelerated growth, but like it's gotta be like weeks, I think is my
You
thinking
think?
here.
I mean,
Okay, maybe they haven't been there for 200 days, so the thinking is if she wasn't there when they when they left, so maybe it's been
that's
around
true.
a year, give or take.
Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah, I guess they do. I could forget that they have. But like, at what point does the accelerated aging stop? When they
I
hit like
I think
age,
when
I
they
guess.
eat, I think they when hit like 30, like when they hit like maturity.
Yeah, or whatever.
Yeah,
Then it's like okay, fair enough. Because then I was like, then they'd be dying off real quick. But I guess yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
But yeah, 'cause, yeah, I
Um,
think I peg her at around like between I don't know 10 and 12,
yeah, I'd say so
probably.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's about the same age as Boba Fett is at this time. I think.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
maybe a little bit younger.
Hmm.
Um, so well, no, she's about the same age that Boba Fett was at the beginning of the Clone Wars. So
Yes,
5 years,
yeah.
about 5 years younger than Boba Fett. So I love this. They have another kind of again this standoff where Crosshair and Hunter are having, and it's like there's like one of like again like 16 of these, and I love this line where he's like, "Every choice you've made since Kulla has been wrong," right?
Hmm.
And like you don't know what you're doing. And like he's struggling with like you're the leader and I need to follow your rules, but I think you're fucking up. And but he's the only one that thinks that he's fucking up, and he's kind of like he realizes that he's the only one that thinks that, and he is like he has like he's having like a headache here. He's like kind of like holding his head. He's kind of like
Yeah.
struggling with it. I love like
Hmm.
this is I think the one of the best scenes of this episode because Omega comes over and talks to him, and she's like, "I know you're angry." Again, this intuition, and asks him, and she's like, "I know what you're gonna do, and I don't want you like you don't have to do it. If you can, just don't, right? But I don't
Yeah.
blame you because it's not up to you.
It's
It's
not
not
your
your
fault.
fault.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
like it's such a like beautiful small moment here. Again, one of those things where like can't believe the rest of the squad is really just like not shocked by any of this stuff that Crosshair's doing.
Right.
But all right,
Yeah.
okay, I'll take it because this moment with Omega is really beautiful.
Mhm.
Um, so what do you like? Anything about the sequence that stands out to you? Again, I think this is where the example of like she's definitely force sensitive. Like if she can see the future,
Okay, yeah.
I think
Yeah, that's
that's
true. It
my
has that
thinking.
intuition. Yeah.
Yeah,
She can like really feel that emotion in people. Yeah, that's fair. Um, yeah, no, I'm obviously a lot more interested to see down the road what happens with her, but
hmm
I've so far I like all the scenes with her. I think she adds like a little bit of comedy, but then a little bit of sweetness and innocence as well too. So
right. Like I struggle with this idea that like does the show need that? I would argue no, it doesn't need
yeah.
it because like it could probably survive on its own as being like a cool gritty clone show, right?
Right.
Which I kind of what it was sold to me as, and like it still is that in a lot of ways, but what they're doing here is adding like that Star Wars heart that you often that
Yes, yeah.
we're used to. She is the audience surrogate in a lot of ways, right? Where she's meeting
Yes.
them for the first time. We can like um empathize with her and her situation where she feels out of place and like so and then being brought into this kind of family dynamic. I think it's great, and I think what's even better
Mhm.
is that they're showing is that she's capable, and she's not a Jar Jar who's going to be like
Right.
fumbling and bumbling, like because that would piss people off, right?
No,
You've got
for
this like
sure.
this batch of clones that is capable, and not just capable, but like the best at that shit,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And then you would have like this kid who's like, "Whoa, what's going on?"
Yeah.
Tripping over their own, like like that would be a piss off. But they're not doing
Yeah.
that. Like later
No.
on, she picks up a blaster and shoots a gun out of someone's hand. Like that's pretty
Yes.
cool stuff, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Call me crazy. So so Crosshair he gets taken separated from the rest of the group. His chip is scanned and it appears to be working. So somewhat less effectively apparently than the regular clones, according to the Kaminoans. So Tarkin's like, "Can you intensify?" And they're like, "I think so." So they like
Oof.
shoot him with a purple beam, and we don't see him for a little bit. So meanwhile, the rest of the squad is trying to figure out how to get out of the brig, right? The cells are retrofitted. They weren't normally designed to be cells, so they use Wrecker's strength and bust through the wall. This might be I feel like one of those situations where the writers kind of walk themselves into a corner, rip themselves into a corner here, because this is a stupid escape plan. Like, they're just gonna stand,
just punch the wall, and
they punch the wall is a dumb idea. And like the idea that they're like, well, let's make a wall. Like, that's gonna how's that gonna stop anything? Like, I don't like.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it because it's silly Star Wars stuff, and but ultimately, they probably didn't have to make it that dumb. They could have done something else. But whatever.
Yeah, that's fair.
They escape. I really like this escape sequence, by the way, because she's like crawling through the vents, which is a classic thing, and then she falls through the vents, which is also a cliche, right?
Yeah.
But as she falls through the vents, what I appreciate is that it doesn't just knock them all out right away, and Hunter's like instantly like, go turn off the thing, like yell, like go turn off the
switch,
cage. Yeah. And so the camera stays on her, and she does do that, and she pulls the switch down, and instead of cutting to show that the force field come down, and then the rest of them kind of come out and beat the shit out of the rest of the clones.
Yeah.
Instead, it stays on Omega as she gets grabbed by one of the shock troopers, and I think I just don't know. I think the way that they shot and staged that is way more interesting, because you see this like, oh, she's grabbed, and you're worried about her, and then from off screen you have Hunter like smash, like punch him right in the face, and it's like, okay, dope, right? Or it might have been Wrecker. I don't remember who, but I think that's a more interesting way of playing that than normally you would have seen.
Definitely, yeah. See, I didn't think she fell through the roof. I thought she did that purposely.
No, I think she for sure fell through. She's like listening to them, and then
because I thought she kind of like slams her hands down and like purposely falls through.
I think that's her being shocked that she's about to fall. Yeah,
fair enough.
So they go to grab their stuff, and conveniently, it's like it's located nearby their ship, which is helpful. And as they're like getting their all like re-geared up, right? We get this really badass like entrance or reintroduction to Crosshair as he emerges like through this door with a squad of clones, and he's got this like slick new black stormtrooper armor that's not like regular storm. It's not even like a Death Trooper armor, right? It's like a variation on something that maybe almost Hunter's helmet with like a more sleeked look. I don't know. I just think it's so cool. Maybe it's silly to give a character a whole new set of armor right away, but it certainly shows that they're a bad guy. And like, I was all for it. I was like, this is really cool. Yeah. What did you make of that? Like his new look?
I liked it. I thought it was cool. Yeah. They obviously made him a little bit more like bad looking, like evil, because it makes sense that he wouldn't have his original gear, because his original gear is with all the other guys. Yeah. So it makes sense. But yeah, no, I liked it. I would agree with you on all of that. Like it makes sense that they would give him like new whatever stuff.
Yeah, it's like prototype stormtrooper armor kind of.
Yeah, and especially because he's a little bit more specialized. Like maybe it's specialty for like more sharpshooters or snipers.
Well, he's got that cool backpack that has like the slot for his rifle, which I think is cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have like this last little standoff between Hunter. I imagine we're gonna get more of these throughout the season. But we have this standoff between Hunter and Crosshair, and it's again that same kind of like, I thought what I was doing was right, and he was like, you've never seen the bigger picture, all this kind of like cliched dialogue. But again, I think it works. It's got this like Western flair to it, and like you can imagine a tumbleweed kind of like drifting through between them, right?
Yeah.
And like, I really like it because it's like it plays a little bit longer than you'd expect. Like this, like kind of like this pause, this sit as they wait for like who's gonna make the next move. Like Hunter's like, is he gonna shoot me? Like I don't know what's gonna happen here. And then he does. He makes the first move. Hunter takes the first shot, and they kind of like all scramble. There's a firefight, yada yada. Wrecker gets shot. Hunter's using Wrecker as bait, which is a particularly like evil thing to do.
Oh, you keep saying Hunter, but you mean Crosshair.
Sorry, yeah, Crosshair. Yeah, Crosshair is using Wrecker is
As
bait.
Wrecker is bait, yeah.
Yeah. And they're like trying to make their escape, and then they're like trying to close the hangar doors, but someone's like, "Ooh, someone's helping them. There's another presence. Someone's
See,
there
that's
to
what I
help."
mean. It's the Kaminoans that are...
one of the Kaminoans is helping them escape, which I thought was like a cool, like, don't reveal that until after, which I was into.
Yes.
What did you think? I want to take a quick pause. What did you think of Wrecker's stuffed animal?
I thought it was cute. I was like, I don't know. I like him and his like adorable, weird, like creepy looking stuffed rabbit. What was his name? Lulu or something?
Lulu or Luna, I think. I think Luna.
I thought it was cute. I was like, oh yeah, like he's this big dumb softy.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I don't know if he needs a stuffed animal. I feel like I already understand. Like I kind of like had enough things about him that like like does he need a stuffed animal? I don't know. I do like that it's like it's got like all the same. It's like got the same color scheme as like the rest of their squad. It's funny.
Does he need to curl gonk droids? Probably not, but it's funny.
No, I guess so. But like that's not a character trait. Like having a stuffed animal like says something about the character, right? Like,
well, I just kind of like that about
stunted.
Yeah, well, even like their whole like their barracks, like their area was just like disgusting, and they were fine with it. Whereas like the other clones are very much more like neat, tidy, proper soldiers, and these guys are just have trash everywhere and like don't even care odds and ends.
Mess.
And like
no wonder it was abandoned.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I like those little bits and breadcrumbs, right, of their personalities, but.
Yeah, that one might be like the one too many. Like
one too many.
I don't just doesn't feel like we need it. I don't know. So they make their escape. They use like I like there's a couple of cool like moments here where like Wrecker clears the smoke. First of all, I like that they use smoke at all, so that's a fun little touch. They clear the smoke, and then it looks like they're that Crosshair has Hunter dead to rights, like he's gonna take him out, and Omega shoots the gun out of his hand, and they make their escape. And it's like you're like, oh wow, okay. We talked about this already. Like she's capable. This is interesting. This kind of changes the game a little bit. I really liked this kind of like final escape sequence. What did you think of it?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it too. I thought it had all those like I really like the scene where Wrecker takes the doors or like the two I don't know things to clear the smoke, and like they're still working together as a team. And yeah, I do. Yeah, I like the whole escape scene. I thought it was done really well.
Yeah,
all those little extra little pieces, and then of course her picking up that gun and then just shooting it out of Crosshair's hands. It's like, oh, okay, like she's got these like underlying like talents too.
It just adds so much more interesting elements, I think, to the show that weren't there before.
Definitely, yeah. So it's not exactly how you said before. So it's like she's not just like a useless child. Like it's can actually help them out a little bit.
So we cut back to Lama Su, one of the Kaminoans, and she's apparently the one who is buying them the squad time to escape. She was like preventing the hangar doors from closing. And she speaks with Nala Se, and that's what I was saying before. Until the Empire's intentions are made clear, say nothing. So this is all going to be kept under wraps. At some point, their escape is going to get more widely known, probably, and things will probably heat up for them. So that'll be later in the season, I imagine. So
right, yeah.
As Wrecker is patched up. By the way, this is the second time that he's shot today. As Wrecker is patched up, Omega chats with Hunter. She's seeing space for the first time. She says she shot her a blaster for the first time, and she's just quote unquote lucky. Although I think she's hiding something there. Hunter suggests that they need to go lay low, and they don't really know how to do that or who to talk to. Omega suggested that, well, don't they have any friends that they can help? And they're like, oh, we don't have a lot of those, but we'll head over to J19 where they quote unquote know a guy. So that takes us into episode 2. Any thoughts on this 90-minute premiere? I know we're going long here, but this is what it is.
It's 2 episodes.
Yeah.
No, the premiere was great. Like I didn't have any complaints about it at all. Honestly, it got me engaged. It got me right into the characters again, right into the Clone Wars again. So, and just more excited to see kind of where it's going to go and where they're going to take everybody now after. But I liked where they picked it up and then just how everything played out too. So I was happy with it.
I love that it was 90 minutes. I think it was like, if they were trying to like, can you imagine if it was only like that first half of this episode was like that premiere episode? I feel like you would be like, oh, let's get going. Like, let's move. This stuff. Like,
no,
we already know about Order 66. We already know about this stuff. Like, what's new, right?
Yes.
And like,
no, I agree.
so they
It was a
introduced
smart
us
move.
to Omega. They give us new motivations, and like I think, and again, I said reintroduce these characters in a more nuanced way. I think it's a really, really, really great premiere. I think it might be one of the best premiere episodes of a Star Wars show we had. It's certainly better than the Clone Wars movie. It's certainly I don't Mandalorian episode 1. Mandalorian episode 1 had a really good first episode, but like I just think this is like really does it had a goal and it sets out to and achieves that goal like really, really well and clean. And sure, there's a couple like little clunky dialogue, a little bit over exposition, but like I'm fine with that because again, you gave us a longer episode to kind of account for that, and then you kind of moved on and introduced new stuff. So I think, like I said, it sounds great, it looks great, it was well acted. D. Bradley Baker's doing amazing work here. Again, just 2 seconds when you're watching the show and realize that it's one guy doing all the clones, and you're like, wow, okay, very good, right? So I just think everything that and I was like, oh great, we're going into episode 2 in like 2 days, sweet. So I think that was a nice little fun surprise as well. So we get to episode 2 and it's called Cut and Run, which I think is a cool name. It has like multiple meanings, right? Because we're working with a clone named Cut, but this idea of like to cut and run is to cut your bait, basically. Like, hey, to leave behind what you had and for the sake of your own safety or for the sake of something greater, right?
Yes.
So it works for me. So this episode does not have the voiceover intro. Instead, it cuts right to the title card, and it kind of like this really like minimalistic way. I'm a fan of this kind of more military-esque style here. I like the voiceover, but this is a different show, and I'm okay with it not being here. Do you want?
Yeah,
would you want it?
I'm definitely okay with that too. No, I'm okay with them not having it too because it's not the Clone Wars, right? Like I understand it being there for the first one, and it was really neat to see it for the first one, but I like getting away from that for the ones going forward.
Yeah, and then another thing that's very different than a lot of Clone Wars episodes is that we pick up basically immediately where we left off in the last episode. They're in hyperspace as they approach Seleucami, which I guess is the same as J19. I don't know what that, whatever. Seleucami. The name is familiar. I'm like, Seleucami, where have I heard that name before? That was like the first thing that I heard when I heard that name. I was like, oh, interesting. I know we've been here before. That'll probably mean something. And, Omega is napping after, having tired herself out from exploring the ship. And we arrive at Seleucami. And when they arrive, Omega has her... I love this scene. It's very short, but her breath is taken away because she sees the sun for the first time. She sees dirt for the first time, right? She like just drops to her knees and starts touching and playing with the dirt. I think that's really cool, visceral moment, and there's some jokes online that sand really gets a redemption here. After getting raked through the coals by Anakin, she says that she's just like, it's amazing when she's talking about
she's so pumped about the dirt. Yeah.
Right. Which I think is really, like, again, these really like human moments from her, and I think it's really great. Apparently the clones, the reason they're here is that they need help to learn how to lay low, and the only person they know who knows how to lay low is the one deserter they know, Cut. Now, we met Cut in a Clone Wars episode where they deal with this whole concept of being a deserter. And it's one of the, I would argue, better episodes of early Clone Wars series. So go check that out. It's only a 130-minute episode that deals with this. We're introduced to Cut for the first time. It's good. He patches up Rex after he gets like injured and left for dead. So we get reintroduced to Cut and his family here. And speaking of Rex, apparently he was just there yesterday, which I always like when you just miss somebody. I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. I know, I like that, right?
Like Rex is doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, I guess so. Like he's like they have similar training, and Rex now having survived Order 66. I wonder if he was there with Ahsoka. It's not clear, I guess. Yeah. But things are tough. Not all the information is shared. He just said that he was there the other day and he was talking about control chips, and then I love how I love Omega. She's like, oh, you must be talking about the inhibitor chips, and like she didn't think to bring this up earlier or talk about this at any time, even though it's clearly a major important thing, right? So and then even Tech is like, well, I knew they were controlled, but I didn't know there was chips. Like, well, how the hell do you think it worked? Like,
Tech was just like, oh, I knew. Like, It's like he just forgets how smart he is. He's like, well,
Yeah,
how else
he's
would
like
they be doing it?
he needs to keep the rest of the group in like up to speed. Like he needs to give them like downloads every once in a while. By the way, I loved when he was
Yeah.
talking about the end of the Clone Wars in the last episode. Like I think it's gonna end, and turns out he was right. It's like another one. I was like, oh, cool. So there's this line here. Well, first of all, Omega meets kids for the first time, people her own age.
Wouldn't she have
And
met other little Bobas though? But I guess they're not really kids because they're clones and they're like in a military base.
Yeah, they're not really like playing.
She's not like kids who play outside. Yeah, it's very different.
First of all, there really isn't an outside. Like there's just rainy spots outside. I don't know, whatever. So, she meets kids for the first time, and I like she's like gonna go out with them, and she like gives that look to Hunter, and he gives her the little nod, right? Classic dad nod, you know.
Yeah.
And then he even goes as far as to do the doorway lean, where you lean in the doorway and you watch the kids play.
Cute. Yeah.
I know there's lots of like jokes about how he's like the next like Mandalorian, he's like the other space dad, but like, is that we talked about in the last one where like more of a brother vibe, but this is definitely giving off a father vibe, don't you think?
Yeah, it's kind of like that protector, and it can be either. It can be that can be like a brother vibe, but it is more like that kind of, what would you call it when someone's not your parent? Like a
Like
guardian
a
vibe,
guardian,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, like he feels responsible for her and he wants to
Well,
make sure she's okay,
I
right?
think it's more than that too, because she looks up to him for guidance,
like
right?
guidance, yeah.
Yeah,
So
and like we don't have this kind of like also another more maybe traditional, more stereotypical kind of dynamic, which is that her pushing back. So I don't know. It's something that I'm okay with. Like everything here is I'm on board with. It's just like at some point they need to decide if they're going for the parent role or the older sibling role, and I think they're leaning more the parent role as we get into this.
right.
Into this.
But I mean, it's
this
kind of the
second
same
episode.
with Jedis and Padawans too, right? Like it's not necessarily a parental role, but it's more than like a sibling role because it's, master and apprentice. So it's almost kind of even like that a bit because he's teaching her things, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a lot of that in Star Wars, so I
Yeah.
shouldn't be surprised. We have Marcos in the chat here. And Marcos, always love to see you in the chat, friend of the show. Yeah, we're back into reviewing Star Wars stuff. So it's a niche for our, for the Tower of Babel to some degree, right? These kind of individual reviews, but always glad to have you in the room. So, let's keep moving on with this episode. Cut says the Kaminoans don't create without a purpose when they're talking about Omega,
Right.
and so they're like, what, what's hers is the implication there, right? And by the way, like we didn't talk about it, her name is Omega, which makes you think of like obviously there being like her being a long line of probably failed experiments, right? All the Greek alphabet, and I'm sure there's more to her name. Omega is the final letter in the Greek alphabet, is my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong here.
I am not too sure.
So I think there's more to it than that. I don't like. There's not enough to really work off of here, in my opinion, for
Right.
like to dive into. But like, she doesn't have a real name. She might as well have a number, is what I'm saying here. And they talk about names and numbers in a little bit. We'll get into that in a sec. But they say that she has a purpose. We'll just get into that. My opinion is that she is force sensitive. Not only my opinion. I'm not saying I came up with this, but obviously we've been talking about this whole episode. Do you think that's what they're hinting at here?
That she's force sensitive?
Yeah. Like, what's her purpose?
Yeah, I think so. See, I don't know yet. I wasn't like, to me, I didn't get crazy like force vibes from her yet. That she's intuitive. Like I just think it's kind of, they're still kind of keeping her purpose and her inherent like trait. Like we're going to figure that out eventually, obviously, right? I just think they're not showing us in the first 2 episodes.
Right.
I think we might just see more. Like she might have tons of traits, right?
That would be
Maybe
really
she's
cool.
The next generation of these Bad Batch, where it's like, oh, she's good at everything. Like,
what if? Oh, that's cool. I didn't even consider that. Like she's just like she's a super soul, like the true super soldier.
Yes,
style.
exactly.
Yeah. She's the Captain
and
America.
It'll just come out. Yeah, it'll just come out. Maybe not necessarily wreck her because she's not we haven't seen her be crazy strong or anything, but
Not because she's not full
the
grown.
shooting and the
Right.
athletics and that kind of stuff. But maybe we'll
Yeah.
see. But we
So
haven't seen her fully tested yet. So
that's true. And well, I mean, maybe we won't, because like I think about this character and it's like, well, what's like a full grown version of Omega like? What's she like as an adult? You know, I'm
yeah,
curious of
exactly.
that. Like, are we gonna meet her as an adult in other media somewhere? I would hope so. I really hope so, because I think that's again another kind of like really fascinating story. But we don't know enough about her to like speculate where she might go. So, okay, so Cut, is kind of like seeing what Hunter can't see yet. Is really that like she is special. She looks up to you. That there's more to it than just that like the need to find her a new home or for to keep her safe. There's more. It's more nuanced than that. You know.
Yeah.
But Cut explains that his plan is to book a flight out of town. It's too risky for his family. He says he has to do what's right for them. Again, this kind of like really on the nose, but saying, Hunter, you need to think about what's right for her, right?
Right. Yeah.
So they head into town, and as they head into town, we see a bunch of aliens that we're familiar with, and Hunter is surprised to see troopers. Again, this is one of these moments where I'm like, I really dig in that, like his analyzing the state of this like post Clone Wars era, in this like when the war's over, they should be like pulling back troops, not holding down a base, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
We see ships are being impounded. What does that mean? They're actually being registered, right? So again, I'm really digging this whole vibe of this era. So
yeah.
When they try to buy a flight out, they're informed that the old Republic credits, or the Republics that they have that are now old, won't work anymore. They need to be exchanged for Imperial credits, and when you do that, you also get a chain code. So this is actually a really brilliant strategy by the Empire. It's really insidious. The idea is that,
for
like,
sure, yeah.
Hey, listen, we have a new currency, but it's fine. Everything, it's a 1-to-1 changeover. You want to change over your credits from Republic credits to Imperial credits, no problem. You can do that. All you have to do is sign up for a chain code, which is basically like a SIN number. By the way, we've heard the chain code kind of heard and talked about in The Mandalorian, obviously. Right. That's kind of like the way they track people, right? And again, this introduction of it, I never really thought about it in that way, like that people didn't have a SIN number before, but now they do, and they have to go get one. And you can understand why people would be bothered or worried about that, right? Like, what does that mean? Like,
yeah.
it's a limitation on my my freedoms. This is apparently what people thought about the introduction of the social insurance number, by the way, for the first time.
Oh, really?
In the 20s. Yeah, and it's like, I totally understand it. Like, you want to register all of us? Like, you don't need to know who and where I am all the time.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
Like,
yeah.
In this case, it's like it's clearly more insidious that you're using it literally to track people, and you have to imagine you go to change over your money, and all of a sudden you have less. Like, who are you going to go to be like, hey, what the fuck? Like, where's my money? Like, oh,
exactly.
Get back in line, right? Like, you're screwed.
Yeah.
So,
no, of course.
the idea here is
I think it's that way of two of them also using that to create like, okay, who's an enemy and who's not. Like, they're creating this whole database of who is on board with this new empire and who isn't. So it's a very easy way for them to, okay, well, if you were on board with us, you would have switched your money a while ago and you would have had a chain code. So if you don't, you're an enemy.
Right. And like, it also has, even if you have a chain code, it allows you to control movement, right? Like, oh no, you're denied access. Like, what do you mean? Why? Well, you don't get to be told why. You're just not allowed. Yeah,
just
right?
Straight up, like, you can't leave the system.
We saw this in Solo. Remember when Han and Khaleesi are trying to leave? I'm trying to remember her name.
Kira.
Right? Are trying to leave, and they don't they ask for their chain codes, and they're like, they don't have any. So. I think that's this is the framework that's being built up around that stuff that is super scary later on, and I just think that's really cool. So there's this line here where, like, they're not just registering ships, they're registering people too, which is like, ooh, spooky.
Extra scary.
So they go back to the homestead, and Omega goes to they're playing catch, and the ball gets outside the fence. And she goes to get it, and there's this big, like, giant cat thing with multiple eyes. Now, did this predator look familiar to you in any way?
Yes. Yeah.
It's the same.
Obi-Wan fights one.
Yes, it's the same cat thing that scratches that scratches the stomach of Padme, that like cuts her shirt open.
Yes. Yeah, that's what it is. I was like, it's somewhere. We've seen one of these before. Yeah.
Yeah, on whatever that planet is now. I can't remember what the hell is it called, where all the bugs are.
Geonosis?
Geonosis, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So on Geonosis, when they're like one of the, I guess they captured one off of this planet, and they took it to Geonosis for this like pit fighting thing. I just think it's cool when they reuse the predators we've seen before. So cool.
I do like seeing that too. Yeah.
So inside, the adults are talking about getting on the next shuttle. They're like, codes or not, we got to get on there. And they get interrupted because they need to go save Omega. It's a good kind of a really fun, quick sequence where like everyone's really capable, including Cut's wife, and she's up there with her rifle, and it's really cool because although it happens quick, they save her. The animal runs away, and Hunter kind of like freaks out on her, and like she's like, "What are you doing? That was a stupid idea." And Cut's like, "It's not her fault. She didn't know better."
Yeah, he's like, she's a kid. Like, she's not. Like, I like how he did tell her, he's like, she's not a soldier. Like, kind of teaching Hunter a little bit. Like, you can't talk to her the same way you talk to like your guys below you or like in your command, right? Like, you got to teach her like a kid.
Yeah, and I love her acting here. She's like, "I'm sorry, I didn't know," and like she just like it's just really vulnerable.
Yes, it's just very
just, like,
sweet
great performance. Yeah. And then Cut like picks her up and like carries her away. He's like, "It's gonna be okay. Like we got you." And they probably gave her like a popsicle or something. And like she was like, "Oh, okay, I'm feeling better." And, so I love this because like at this point, like then Hunter just like he's just all about resolve. And like he's like I know what to do. We need to get this family off of this planet. That's our mission, right? And so he turns to Tech and he's like, "Can you forge these chain codes?" And I love the line. He's like, "Well, despite only learning of them moments ago, I think I can," which is like, I think an acknowledgement by the writers that yes, it's obviously a silly thing to introduce a completely new concept and have someone being expert at it enough to be able to hack it. It's obviously silly, but who cares? It's Star Wars, so he's like, he just acknowledges
he's
it
that
right
smart.
away. Yeah, despite only learning of it moments ago. Yes,
it's also still in that underlying thing of like in like the Empire being a little bit more incompetent. Like they're rushing things, they're doing things really quick, they're trying to switch all these things over, so it's a little less secure than things were before. When you had like all these intelligent Jedi like helping you work on things and helping you do all this stuff, and then now you don't have them because you murdered them all. So it's like, now your crazy smart clone can just easily hack your stuff because it's like, not as protected.
Yeah, there's a lot of security theater involved in the Empire, right? Like we just put a lot of boots on the ground, and like that's enough to like quell resistance most of the time. But like it turns out if you scratch a little bit deeper, it's really not that deep, and they're fairly easy to like circumvent.
Tech's just like, "Oh yeah, I got this." Like,
which may or may not be true about the real world, but I actually, I don't take the time to scratch a little bit deeper and find out. It turns out I could be breaking the law nonstop and it wouldn't even matter. But like, I don't, that's fine. I'm fine with that.
People get fake IDs all the time, so
that's true.
Thing.
Actually, that's fake passports and stuff. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. So they have this kind of like, again, this side. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna hack it. Tech is going to go off and make his kind of build out his plan. Meanwhile, Hunter is has this brief conversation with Sue, the wife of Cut. And again, I think nice writing here because it's really subtle. She's like, it's played very casually. They obviously have a prior relationship. They know each other. He's like, "Oh, I forgot how such a good shot you were," and it's just like right down to business. And it's like, hey, kids are always going to find a way to get into trouble. And protecting them is our job. And that's basically the line or what she's trying to communicate to him, like the lesson of this whole episode in a lot of ways. I love when I'm a sucker for when characters that we don't really know each other from some previous thing that we've never seen before. I just like that dynamic. I've always enjoyed like, ooh, it's very fun. I've been watching the Oceans movie, Oceans 11, Oceans 12. There's a lot of that in those movies. And sometimes maybe too much of it because you're like, man, I don't even know what you guys are talking about. But I like it here. Any thoughts on any of this stuff before we move on?
No, I enjoyed all of it. I thought it's a lot of like very sweet like learning moments for all of them because it's kind of new territory, right? For these Bad Batch to have like a kid with them now. So
Yeah.
I thought it was all very endearing.
Agreed. Echo is surprised people would want an ID number, right? Because he's a clone. He's like,
Yeah.
we all wanted names, not numbers. Now people are signing up to get numbers, and he's like, I love that, just like
Right.
calling it out, because
Yeah.
for a clone that would be huge, right?
For sure.
It's a huge regression, right? But for someone who's never had a number, it might not make as much of a difference, right? Again, just like a subtle little thing. I like for me, this show, I don't like take the action, take it or leave it, right? There's no like badass lightsaber fights, so it's like it's just like cool enough blaster fights, but it's the quiet moments, these like learning moments, these conversational moments. That's what like wins me over.
Yeah, I totally
in this
agree
show.
with that. Yeah.
So the plan, the plan that Tech comes up with is to get the ship impounded so they can get inside the Imperial spaceport so that they can steal the chips and codes. So it's all going well, but it turns out Omega was on the ship the whole time. She's like, I think it's a great plan. I love that.
Just sitting there, they're like, oh,
Yeah.
fuck.
So the regular clones at the port note that the ship is a modified Omicron class attack shuttle. So this is just a shout out to people who love the nerdy like ship stuff. That's the same type of shuttle that like Emperor Palpatine flies in on, and you obviously know that because like the wings kind of fold up.
Yeah, they do that weird fold up thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they also put a locking boot on it, so that they can't fly away. This is something we've seen now in a couple Star Wars things. Very fun.
They're always on the Falcon.
Yeah, they're always on the Falcon. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Lots of callbacks to Solo in this episode, actually. So Tech sends Echo to sneak into the compound to get the chips and hack/slice into the network. This is like a quick little heist scene. Always fun. No issue here. Like it goes completely no hitch. Like they just get the things, come back, and they start programming them. Meanwhile, Hunter and the rest of the gang are in plain clothes. They're making their way to the shuttle to the kind of the bus shuttle to take off, and like the stakes at this point are like fairly high. So there's lots of clones like dispersed throughout the town. They can't get caught. I like that Echo's like, well, you can't get. He like freaks out on Tech. He's like, what do you mean we can't get caught? We can't get caught at all. We get tied up in a. Yeah. We can't get tied up in a gunfight because if we do, they'll lock down the whole port. Turns out that's actually not true because they do get locked into a gunfight later and they don't lock down the whole port. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess it doesn't matter.
No, it really doesn't.
Omega overhears this and she's like, I'm going to take this into my own hands. She grabs the ID cards and the chips because she knows that, these fully grown-ass men in like very conspicuous armor aren't going to be able to sneak through.
No.
And get them to like these regular folks. So she's like, I got this. She grabs them. She runs out. Meanwhile, Echo is trying to get the boot unlocked and not really having a lot of success. I'm the maintenance crew.
Yeah. Yeah, just worst lie.
Yeah, I know. But I love it. That's also classic Star Wars. Everything's good here. Thank you.
Yeah,
good stuff. As a
He's
bunch
just this
of clones...
weird, overly pale, like half droid with one arm, like
one arm that has like the R2 hack thing.
Droid split. What is it called? Splicing?
I don't think so. There's an actual name for it. I watched it in a video and I don't remember. I already forgot what it's called.
Yeah.
And as she's making her way to drop off the chips. By the way, they keep using the term chips in this, and it's like I think it's or discs. They keep saying discs.
Discs, yeah.
They keep saying discs,
floppy
but
discs.
They're not round, but like it's clearly a callback to floppy disk because But I don't think anyone who's like fairly young would really have any idea what the fuck they're talking about. They're like discs. These are clearly square.
Yeah, I'd say we're on the outskirts of the end of people who our age group is like who would still know what a floppy disk is.
Yeah, but I used to have to put a Word document on a floppy disk so I could drop it off to my to my teacher
in junior high and high school. Yeah.
And you plug it into your computer, go yeah. So it actually is a lot like Star Wars in that way. So,
Yeah.
so they keep calling them these discs. And I'm like, man, that's weird that they call them discs. But now, in retrospect, that makes way more sense.
Yeah.
So she's on her way, and she gets caught by an Imperial R2 droid, and like it does that like freak out scream thing, but like a version of the one
I
R2
love
does.
those.
I think it's hilarious. It's
Yeah.
the weirdest sound. I think it's so funny.
I love when R2 droids flip out and do their weird BB screams.
Yeah.
It's my favorite. Like they're just surprised. It's my favorite.
Right.
I love them.
So I tried to just do it. I totally like hurt my throat. So this R2 unit gets smashed on the head because Wrecker, which I like, by the way, this is a moment where Wrecker's like, I'll handle this. And he's like, took some initiative on his own and like showed some creative thinking and like wasn't just this dumb brute. This is what I mean when I'm like, okay, and like these characters are becoming much more fully rounded.
Yes.
Characters. Yeah. And so she creates a distraction while Omega delivers the chain codes. I love that at this moment, like Cut is getting cold feet. He's like, this isn't gonna work. It's not gonna work. We have to leave, right? And Hunter's like, no, trust me, it's gonna work. It's gonna work. Behind them, that creepy ass droid, that like those torture droids that we always see. I always call them out because like, one of those like walks behind them. I'm like, ooh, that's that it's Imperial stuff now, and those creepy ass droids are.
Yeah. It's like the creepy hunchback droids.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They're like a C-3PO, but like a scary one.
Yeah, super like they're Nightmare.
Yeah, Nightmare C-3PO.
Nightmare C-3PO,
yeah. And that's, you'd think, isn't the version of C-3PO where he's naked and he's just all wires the Nightmare version of C-3PO? In some ways, yes. Also true. Yeah.
I mean, unless you're reading Dr. Aphra, then there's 000, and he's just like a full-blown, like we have talked about before, but he's literally like a full-blown sociopath, like serial killer robot. So
right. So turns out the plan goes off without a hitch, basically, except for the fact that they can't get the boot off their ship. And as Cut is like taking his family aboard, right? One of the droids is like, "Wait a minute, you look just like me."
Yeah.
And it looks like everything's about to fall apart, but because Wrecker is like I said, they're having a massive shootout, so I guess that wasn't an issue, and it actually turns out it helped.
Huge distraction.
So they send all these clones like, we need help, and they go back up, and they escape to the they're about to escape to the ship, where there's this moment where I love it. This is so like, just like, again, young kid, he's like, well, Tech made 5 of them for some reason, so here's all 5. Like, I don't know, even 5. There's only 4 of you. I don't know, like, and she's like, you didn't tell her? Ugh. Right? Classic line. Also great. And so Omega and Hunter have to have this like one last like heart to heart, and he's like, you need to go with them. They can. What I really love about this is that like, she's like, did I do something wrong? Like, why are you sending me away?
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, it's not about that. It's about, they are a family. They can give you a life that you deserve. Right? Is that the way he says it? And I'm like,
something like that. Yeah.
He's actually right though.
He is.
She should 100% go with Cut. Like, there's if she wants to have any sort of life at all, where she's not constantly pursued and in danger constantly, she should 100%. And like, he makes the right choice here. Like, I truly believe that Hunter's like, I'm not a father. I don't know how to take care of a kid. It doesn't even matter. This person does know all these things. I trust them. They're my friend. I'm trusting you. This is like, hey, I just met this kid, but I like them. I trust you to take care of them. And he's like, okay, I'll do it. I just think that like, I love that. It all makes perfect sense. So I appreciate that. So she's like, okay, they have this like last little stare at each other as he like walks away. And I just think it's kind of like pretty touching, considering we just met them, basically,
Yeah.
You consider it. But it works. And we have, again, like I said, this blaster fight. They get the boot off, despite the fact I'm a little upset because Echo's basically been useless for the first 2 episodes. He's not very helpful.
I know.
And it's like, I'm sure he'll have his moments in this. Like, sure, he does go and steal the discs here, but like ultimately he's been like a minor player. everyone will have their time in the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm okay with that. And
It could have
so
at least let him get the boot off, though.
Yeah, because like, what do we really need Wrecker to break another thing? Like, that's like, we get it. Like, he's strong. Yeah. So they get the boot off. They take off, and like right about when they're about to leave, she like Omega like runs around the corner. Wait for me! And like, this is one of those moments where you're like, oh no, this could go really poorly. But like, and she even gets grabbed by a clone and everything.
Right. Like, you're gonna get everybody killed.
Yeah, but like Hunter has this like hand-to-hand combat scene like just right before this happens where he like leaps in and like knees a clone in the head and like does a spin kick and like hits the other. It's pretty badass, if I do say so myself. He might be like I really did think Hunter was really lame when I first met him. Like, I was like, I know, honestly go back to her. Fan. I was like, this guy is super lame. Like, I just like,
you're like, he just has knives. It's stupid.
Like, well, he's like, because he was just running. He was going through a gun. He was literally taking a knife to a gunfight, and it's like,
yes,
this doesn't make sense. But they make it make more sense here, right? Because he can't have his blaster and he like steals a blaster off a clone. I just think it's really cool. Like, the choreography is good in this case. Less good in the Clone Wars finale. He's like, he was just like walking up. You would just walk up to these battle droids and like cut them in half. It was like the dumbest shit. I don't know. It was whatever. So they take off, they get away, and they're on the ship, and inside, like you mentioned before, Wrecker's like lifting gonk droids for some reason. Like, okay, gonk. It's like, all right, cool, fair enough.
Gonk, yeah.
And Omega and Hunter have a brief conversation to wrap up the episode, and they basically apologize to each other. She's like, "I'm sorry, I made mistakes, but I promise I'll learn. This is just all new to me." And he says, "Like, listen, I get it. It's all new to me too. It's fine. We're copacetic." Yeah. And then she's like, "I want to stay with you. Like, I left Kamino with you. I didn't like. It's important to me." And he's like, "Okay, if this is where you want to be, this is where you'll stay." And I just like the idea that like it's up to her. Like, if she decides at some point that she wants to be somewhere else, he'd 100% support that decision too, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, he's saying, "Okay, you want to be part of the group? You're gonna be part of the group. That means we don't know what that really means yet, but like he's like, okay, like I'm not gonna try to dump you off. Like, by the way, like Mando did for the first season of The Mandalorian, right? I'm not just gonna try to get rid of this kid, you know." Right. I like that. I think that's a bit of a change.
No, it's nice. And it is that, because obviously it makes the most sense. And it's the easiest thing to drop her with this other family, but that's not what she wants. So he's actually like, okay, like if that's not what you want, then you can stay with us and we'll make this work and we'll train you to be one of us. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Not just being like, no, you're just like a dumb kid. Like, go with that family. It's like, okay, yeah, you want to fight? You can fight. I guess we'll figure it out.
Well, I wonder if there'll be like a training something next. I honestly don't know where they go. Like,
probably.
So they need to stay under the radar. I like Cut's line where like, hey, you really want to know how to stay under the radar? Like, abandon this life of a soldier and like start a new life, right?
Yes,
and like, are they prepared to make that decision? Like, I don't think they are, and I'm sure.
Yeah, are they going to go be farmers somewhere?
Well, like I think that's what I think that's what Cut's advocating, and I don't think that this I don't think this gang of brutes is really that's not for them, you know?
No, definitely not. But yeah, I guess we'll see where their adventures take them.
There's got to be a call to action. We know that we know that they meet Rex at some point in this season, and so what does that mean? Like, are they going to get like pulled up what I guess I'm most curious about is like, what do these clones who had their chips removed? We know that Wolf and Gregor. We got these guys who don't have to have them removed, but you know what I mean. There's a couple of them. Like, are they joining up? Are they teaming up? Like, what are they trying to do? What's their mission? What's their goal? You know, like, where is Ahsoka during all this? Like, you know, are they? I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts here. This is a part of the timeline that we know a lot about in like from a grand scale, right? But we don't know a lot about like the details, especially from like a personal level, like these clones. So that's what I'm most excited about. I think it's gonna be really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wonder if we'll see like, I don't know, are we gonna see any Vader hunting down Jedi?
100% Vader is gonna appear in this. You think that they made the Darth Vader Clone Wars asset for like a 30-second cameo at the end of Clone Wars? No.
Yeah,
absolutely not. and it's not going to be that skinny ass version from Rebels that we're going to be seeing, right? Like it's going to be
right.
We're going to get Vader at some point, and he's probably going to kill one of them. Like honestly, like I don't like I. So like I don't know, but I don't even know if like is this show even multiple like are we only getting one season of the show, and like if not,
true.
what does that mean? Like I don't know. There's a lot of questions. So all I'm saying is I'm on board. I'm super stoked. This is, in my opinion, I think
too.
Met and exceeded my expectations, because although I didn't really know what this is going to be, I think this has been really great. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I would totally agree with that. Like I went into it pretty blind and pretty just being like, okay, like I'm just going to give this the benefit of the doubt, makes, not have too crazy high hopes. Like I did see some people grumbling like, oh, the second episode's filler. It's like, yeah, like that's how shows work.
No, but like also just what? Who cares? Like
exactly. It's not the last season. It's not like
this isn't this isn't Game of Thrones season 8. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we don't
Bad Batch animated season 1. Like let's calm
it's
down.
episode 2. I think we can take a second to like take a breath after Order 66. Like this is the stuff that I want. I don't like when people say that, I like, what do you want from the show? Like I don't like what are you expecting? Like I don't.
Do you just need like? Do you need cameos and big things every episode? That'd be insane. It'd be ridiculous. Like
they want a movie every episode, and that's not how it works. I mean, TV shows are different. They allow for us to explore these much more nuanced character moments that we don't get in movies. We don't have time for.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, sure, this show actually moves fairly fast. Like, there's a lot happening. But
it's so much happened in those first 2 episodes. It's like, okay, we started off super strong.
Well, yeah, we're 2 hours into a podcast talking about them, so it's like, duh. But like, this, like I talked about these moments where like Hunter's having to grapple with the idea of having a child on his squad, or or giving her away in some degree to
and they also just
like these are interesting ideas and concepts.
Yeah, and they fully just had one of their like brothers that they've known their whole lives turn on them too.
Right.
So it's like, they're dealing with a lot right now. It's
they even mention at the end like with they're like Crosshair's going to be on her ass, like so.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's going to be hunting them for sure.
Yeah, and despite that, his name is Hunter, so
yeah.
The Hunter's now the hunted, if you know what I mean.
That's probably going to be some title at some point in this series.
The hunters become the hunted.
Hunting the hunted, yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Hunter the hunted, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that being said, their first 2 titles are pretty good. Cut and Run.
They were.
And Aftermath are both really, I think,
really
strong title like names. We've seen episode titles for Clone Wars that are not as strong. So I wouldn't be surprised if we got something that's a little bit more on the nose.
Yeah.
Like that. Okay, well, we'll be trying to keep up with this show on a weekly basis, and it's going to be going through summer, which makes it harder. But we're still in lockdown, so where are we going?
Yeah,
at this point. True. So stay tuned. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Tower Babblecast if you're still listening. What insane, really, to be honest. Thank you. At Tower Babblecast on Twitter, Facebook.com/Tower Babblecast. You can actually find all of our social media. I just made a link tree, so you can go to Linktree. Whatever the link.tree, however that works, the link tree URLs, and then /Tower Babblecast. That'll get you links to all of our social media, all of our podcast feed, like literally everything is there. And I'll be adding to it as well to make sure it's literally the most comprehensive list of all things TOB. So find that as well. And in fact, it's actually, if you go to our Twitter, it's the link in our Twitter there. So take a peek. And again, patreon.com/Tower Babblecast. Help support the show. Keep the lights on. And we'll be back next week with Season 1, Episode 3 of The Bad Batch. Okay.